Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto was shunned as Konoha's demon when he was born with the Kyuubi sealed in him. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Where it begins, the trees stood in favorable attention, ever reaching for the sky towards the sun that was now at its peak over the azure plain. For hundreds of years, this forest has stood unchanged. But the serenity and tranquility that was in this zone of vast vegetation has been imbalanced by several alien interlopers. 4 of which warped through the cool afternoon breeze. Their features from the eyes of the forest were nothing more than black blurs hurrying towards an unseen destination. With graceful agility, they jumped from tree branch to tree branch linearly while gliding steadily. Each step that they made couldn't be heard. They were as silent as the shadows themselves. While in their steady pace, dogged to keep moving, one of them seemed troubled. As a result, the blur in the back of the group spoke of the matter. "There's a bunch of people with identical churka all around us. What the hell is this?" The troubled blur had long red hair and the same color of eyes that were overshadowed by glasses over them. This same blur wore a black coat that ran all the way down its knees. It was mostly open except for the neckline of the coat. The relayed knowledge from his partner in crime sharpened the consciousness of another one of the blurs in this group. He wasn't agitated, but predicting this possibility, he felt he needed to voice out just for amusement. "Do we need to take another route, Sasuke?" the cynical one said to the blur leading the way. His stride was heavier than the rest because, underneath his coat, he seems to be carrying a heavy burden that equaled him in height. Though he did not look like he could carry such a thing, his agile leaps from the tree branches said the contrary. As it stands, he seemed capable of leading this group. However, this question that he proposed showed that the person named as Sasuke was in charge of the group's actions. Being the leader of the group, Sasuke made a quick choice, seeing as the time had not permitted them leisure to think. "Ignore it, we'll charge straight through." Sasuke had the same black coat over his white gi, which was left open to reveal his chest and stomach. It was tied at the end with a large purple rope that was tied in a bow at the back. He also wore pants of the same color as the rope and black shinobi sandals with uncovered ends for the toes to be seen and a guardless katana, positioned slightly diagonal on his back for his right arm to reach with ease. He had deep brown eyes that borderlines toward black, and black hair that rose at the back with bangs parted at the front to cover his cheeks. From his emotionless reply to the question, the cynical blur sighed in relief and said, "Thank Kami, detours always wipe me out." With that, they dashed away into the foliage. While they dashed further along, more blurs trailed them like wolves on the hunt, in the same direction except the blurs hot on their tail were white. It was a hunt that had exceeded the normal stamina of an average human being as they brushed past the forest with feats of agility never seen by normal human eyes. Then again, only the eyes of the forest could glimpse at the elegant game of tag that they pursued. Unknowingly to the two factions playing cat and mouse, a lone blur, several meters away from the chasing groups, stopped momentarily. Keeping his blonde locks of hair up was a black headband with the symbol of a spiral that looked like a leaf engraved on a metal plate. He wore a coat opposite in color to the ones in black except for the double black lines that lined the end of the coat. Underneath the coat, he wore a zipped-up jacket with black coloring the top half, an orange at the other half and a red spiral at the back. He also wore orange pants and the same shinobi shoes as Sasuke. Tied to his right leg was a kunai pouch, and several more tied to the belt at the back. Not knowing where to go, but determined, he pushed on to look for the group of Sasuke. During his pause, he stiffened in shock as if nostalgia took over from the sight in front of him. As his cerulean eyes glared at what was in front of him, he screamed the name of someone he thought he'd never see again as if it was a mist in his mind. "Sasuke!" Before he could say any more, Sasuke shoved his electrically charged left hand into the blonde's chest. Then, taking the full brunt of the attack, the blonde was thrown backwards and disappeared into smoke. "What the F?" said the troubled blur from shock as the blonde disappeared from sight. "A shadow clone." The cynical one quickly responded, severing the profane word to one ambiguous letter. This, however, did not please the blur leading the way. His cold and unemotional face didn't at the slightest bit change in expression as he sighed and spoke. "Naruto, he never gives up." 0. Several miles away, still in the midst of countless grass and trees, a group of white blurs just meters away from Sasuke's group aimlessly searches for them, not knowing how far they could be or where they might have gone to. Within that group, the blonde telepathically received the last image of his Kage Bunshin who confronted Sasuke. Instantaneously, he relayed the message to the rest of the team with him. "I found him." The rest of the team of 7 with him in white coats simultaneously turned their heads towards the blonde. Everyone's heart now beating in hopeful reassurance that this time, they have found what they're looking for. "Way to go, Naruto." "Which way?" the dog rider ahead of him asked excitedly. His dog was colored white while its ears were colored red. The rider wore the same headband as Naruto, had brown hair in a similar fashion, and red markings that ran from his cheeks towards his chin in a blade shape. Underneath his coat, he wore a black jacket covering his fishnet undershirt, and black pants and shinobi shoes of the same color. He has the same battle gear as Naruto. Upon hearing this question, he turned his head forward with determined eyes, made this brief reply: "Follow me." With that, the rest of the group followed in acknowledgement, speeding off, from branch to branch. As Naruto moved along, he began clearing the maelstrom in his mind as he concentrated on finding the current location of Sasuke and his group. "You're not getting away this time, Sasuke," he thought to himself with absolute staunchness. While he allowed himself to get caught in his thoughts, one of the team members too had been caught in the same nostalgic trance. But because of her liberal personality, she openly spoke her thoughts. "It's been too long, then again rather short, since we saw him last time. It sure has, Sakura. But at least this time we have a positive lead," he replied to the pink-haired youth. Sakura had green eyes, and a red version of the headband on top of her head. Her hair was short, more suited for combat than for style. Underneath her coat, she sported a red sleeveless vest that was zipped up starting from her left waist all the way up to the center of her neckline. She wore pink shoulder pads and skirt which was slit in the front and sides except for the pink straps which held it in place. She also wore black gloves and tight shorts of the same color which rose an inch above her knees, and the same colored boot-like version of the shinobi shoes. And lastly but not least, the same battle gear as her comrades. However, she was not the only one who motioned to speak her mind. Another one of the team members motioned in her heart to speak. Shy and reserved, her mind wished to speak though her timid heart could not. As she struggled in her soul and opened her lips to spread out what has been relentlessly waving through her mind, she just shut her lips in utter defeat to her heart. Those at the front didn't see her actions, but they were by those closest to her. The person beside her, who noticed her odd actions, questioned as to what she was to say. "You were saying something, Hinata?" the perceptive man asked away, curious of the shy one's actions. The man had his headband raised enough so the other end could cover his left eye and made his hair sway more to the left. He wore a blue mask that covered most of his lower face and nose. He wore a blue undershirt with sleeves, pants and shinobi shoes of the same color. He also wore a green sleeveless cargo vest with many pouches at either side of the front of his vest and a red spiral on its back. "And no, it's nothing, really," the shy one said as she blushed and closed her lavender eyes to avoid another expected question. This, of course, raised an eyebrow on the perceptive man. Quenching his suspicions, he then replied, "Are you sure? We're still a way off from Sasuke and his group. It might be important." "No, really. It's nothing at all, Kakashi-sensei, it's not that important," she said as she looked towards the ground below and touched the tips of her index finger. Hinata had long bluish-black hair flowing in her back which reached just at the middle of her spine. Her hair was shorter in the front except for the bangs in the side that hung until neckline for her eyes and white-skinned face to show. She wore a blackish-blue version of the ninja headband on her neck and a jacket, which was mostly purple except for the sleeves and hood at the back that were white except the ends of the sleeves were purple. She wore blue pants which became tighter around the ends and raised about 4.5 inches above her ankles to reveal her black shinobi shoes which were mostly open and strapped to cuff just above her ankles. She also had the same battle gear as the rest of her comrades. "It can wait after we retrieve Sasuke. After all, we still have a mission." Flashback. The entire team of 8-9 if you count the canine of the dog rider, assembled at the rooftop of a shrine somewhere out in Fire Country. As soon as all members of the search party were present and at attention, Kakashi spoke his orders to them. "We'll start by searching everywhere in a 5-kilometer radius, using this roof as our center. If we don't come up with anything, we'll relocate and search another 5-kilometer area and repeat until we find a clue." 5 kilometers? But our wireless equipment won't work if we split up that far. "And we'll be in danger if we're alone and something happens," the panicked pink-haired girl said as she carefully took into account her sensei's words. While still having their attention, she motioned her own opinion. "We should go in teams of 2, at the very least. That way if we encounter any enemy." "Relaxed, Sakura," one of the older ones in the team said, reassuring her that the problem would be settled. Kakashi crouched down and slammed his right palm flat upon the red-tiled roof and a summoning seal revealed itself. In an instant, a puff of smoke appeared. When it finally cleared, 8 dogs in several shapes and sizes appeared. The pink-haired kunoichi just stood awestruck by the sudden appearances of the canines. More so was she surprised when the smallest dog, who sat on the head of the biggest dog, started to speak. "The echoes of your voices will reach our ears just as fast as wireless gear. And our noses will detect danger well enough in advance to back the closest person up." "Pakken!" the young blonde shouted as he instantly recognized the brown pit bull with a forehead protector on top of his head and a blue vest with a strange insignia on its back. With the blonde and Kakashi's faithful summon reunited, Kakashi wasted not time to inform the team of their reconnaissance tactic. "Here's how our patrols will work. Each person on patrol will have 2 of my ninja hounds as bodyguards. Be nice to them, okay? 2? Wait, but then, hiya Sakura-chan," one of the dogs said as it approached her. "You always go for the noisy girls, man," the other said as it followed his companion. As they formed their teams, Naruto mentally counted the number of dogs. Aside from the dog rider who already has one, he noticed that he had no canine companion with him as well. "What about me?" the young blonde questioned. "Since you're a Jinchuriki, they'll be targeting you. Since Akatsuki may attack you first, you'll be going with Yamato for backup and Hinata for her scouting abilities," Kakashi replied. "And Bull since he's loud," Pakken added from Kakashi's right shoulder where he was perched. The largest of the summoned dogs barked in reply as his spiked collar shook slightly, and his dumpy gray mane flowed with the wind. Naruto turned his head around to see the large dog that replied, just in time to see Hinata approach him. "Oh, let's do our best, Naruto-kun." "Right," the enthusiastic blonde curtly replied. "I'll give it my all so we can find Sasuke, Naruto-kun." The shy Hinata thought to herself with fierce, but quiet determination. With that, the other dogs began to form in pairs as each formed their specific tracking group and commenced the operation to find Sasuke or Itachi. After each member found their canine companions, Kakashi made his final order before they set off. "Alright guys, remember that trailing Sasuke's scent takes priority, and Akatsuki comes second. And regardless of which target you find, your mission is only to determine their location and report back here." Everyone in the team looked poised and ready to depart. All they needed was the signal from Kakashi. When the one-eyed Jounin saw they were ready, he raised his right hand and gave the signal. "Scramble!" The entire team then blurred out of existence when they leapt off in different directions. End of flashback. As they leaped for hours from branch to branch, in exhaustion, another question from a teammate in that group was darted at the blonde leading the way. "How much further, Naruto?" spoke the exhausted one of the team. He had brown hair and wore the same clothing as Kakashi except for his headband, which was shaped to curve his cheeks and chin, and he wore no mask which allowed everyone to see his face. His face showed concern to the rest of the team, knowing that Sasuke could be long gone before they know it. Sensing this and equipped with the knowledge necessary to locate said person, Naruto replied, "Not much further, Yamato Taicho. If we hurry, we might be able to catch them before they make it to the border by sunset." With his mind rest assured that it's not much further, Yamato then commanded away. "Good, let's keep moving. Everyone, don't fall behind." With that firm command, the entire team jumped further and faster towards the direction that Naruto was leading. "Sasuke knows we're on to him before we get there. By the way he moves before we do, he must have one heck of a team member who can feel our presence from several meters away. It would be wise if we can find a way to know the general direction of where he is headed," the hooded one said in a monotone voice. "He wears the hood of his coat to cover his head full of black hair and face from the sun. He wore a forehead protector and black shades. He also wore a black shirt with a straightened-up collar that covers his entire neck and lower face, shoes and rolled-up pants of the same color. His feet were bandaged all the way up to his lower legs so none of his skin could be seen. He also wore the same battle gear as the rest." Everyone nodded at his statement, knowing full well how far his or her target was running and how fast. Another one of the 8 members motioned to reply to his statement. "You're right there, Shino. It's not exactly a walk in the park like last time in Orochimaru's hideout. Even the slightest amount of churka might trigger suspicion from them. That means Hinata's Byakugan would be useless if we can't think of a distraction," the objective one in the group said. He wore the same battle gear and forehead protector like the rest. His shirt was colored black and hung just above his stomach. His gloves, pants, shoes and hair were of the same color as the shirt. He had the same color of eyes as Sasuke. In fact, he could very well be Sasuke's twin, as he looked just like him if it were not for his shorter, tamer hair that flowed down to his cheek. With his calculated statement, all were thinking of a way to counter this weakness. Until, like a spark of a fuse, Naruto's brain lit up with an idea. "I've got an idea for that problem, Sai and Shino," he said to the black-clad objective one and the hooded one with the monotone voice. All eyes now turned to Naruto with open minds and ears, waiting on his brilliant plan. The pink-haired youth asked away in impatience. "What is it then?" Undeterred, Naruto began to give the necessary commands to his team in order to commence the imminent operation. "Kiba, could you spray Akamaru's scent on us? And Kakashi-sensei, can we have the other dogs spray their scent on us as well?" he said to the dog rider and the perceptive man. A fox grin formed on his face. This startled everyone and put all in fear of what his unconventional plan was. The entire team then just sweat dropped and had a bluish-pale expression on them. These questionable orders from Naruto's lips inspired a heightened emotion from a certain pink-haired youth. "Baka! Like hell I'd get pissed on by a Mudshinaru," she screamed while vomiting the words pissed on, and a vein started throbbing on her head. Of course, the rest of the team reluctantly agreed, but still stumped by how it will break off their chakra trail from the enemy's line of sight. The dog rider then took the liberty of speaking his mind concerning the matter. "Sure, no problem, I think I get what you're doing. But our chakra..." Before Kiba could continue his sentence, Naruto raised his hands and used his 2 fingers, both the middle and index, from both hands to form a cross pattern and shouted, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." Soon, all 8 of them saw 8 more Naruto clones appear before them. With a quick shout of henge from the original Naruto, all the clones became identical copies of the team of 8. Seeing his plan in motion, the perceptive man was no longer baffled. "I get it now. By spraying the dog's scent on us, we would smell like the summoned dogs and we would chase them in 2 directions. They would notice the clones but not the dogs and probably confuse us for the summoned dogs," the one-eyed Jounin said as he paced faster. Understanding this, the hooded one with a monotone voice continued his dialogue. "The churka signatures won't be noticed because we would smell like the summoned dogs and they would think we summoned more dogs to the battlefield." With a smirk on his face, Naruto nodded. With this done, the clones followed the trail with some of Kakashi's summoned dogs while the rest split in another direction, hoping to reach them on the other side through the cliffs near the edge of the forest. When they reached the end of the cliff, Hinata, from a reserved state, was now confident enough to use her skills to detect the enemy. Clasping her hands in a strange fashion with some of her fingers tucked in, she shouted, "Byakugan, I can see them. It seems they're running away faster now into the cliff up ahead. The plan is working. Naruto's plan is leading them into a dead end." It actually worked. The rest of the team except Naruto just smiled as they heard her reconnaissance of the area. Now poised and ready to ambush them from their vantage point, they readied themselves for battle. Sakura, though worried, put on her bravest face as she tightened her grip on her gloves. Sai prepared his scroll and brush and checked how much ink he has left. Shino sent his bugs out into the grounds where they would commence the strategy at his whim. Kiba and Akamaru, his dog, just sat at the foothill to hide their presence as planned. Yamato clung close to the walls of the cliff, keeping an eye out ahead, while Hinata and Naruto hid among the trees closest to the cliff to prepare for the capture of Sasuke's group. There was silence. Not even the chirping of birds was heard. The wind died down in the barrier of silence. This was it. It is their one and only one chance to regain an old friend. Where it continues, silence, an ominous one to be exact. Only the souls of those who lived in this forest could possibly understand why it was so eerie and tense. While friends and foes gathered together for the fateful encounter that would inevitably change their lives, nature had other things planned for them. For the trespassers on nature's domain, only the souls of the dead can attest to their fate in this chapter of their lives as nature itself decides to join in the battle. With Naruto's team prepared and itching for the battle to end this game of cat and mouse, Yamato, Naruto's new captain and sensei, kept ever vigilant of the horizon. With watchful eyes, he kept a steady gaze until he saw exactly what they had prepared for. Without a moment's notice, he turned his head towards the team and said, "They're here." As they heard his voice echo through the cliffs, they sharpened themselves for the plan to capture their foe, hook, line, and sinker. Naruto stood as still as he could in the edge of the forest nearest the cliffs, with Hinata beside him. As Hinata crouched to make her less noticeable through the tufts of foliage, Naruto, with his left hand, carefully reached for his back pouch on his belt. As he took in his hand a kunai with a tag tied to its end and the kanji for fire written on it, he went through his mindscape, trying to play the rerun of the plan to capture Sasuke in his mind. Flashback. Just after Hinata had used her Byakugan to see the enemy on the horizon, Kakashi grabbed their attention to strategize on how they will go about to turn the slippery eel into a caged bird. With an authority brimming from his unseen lips, and his once speeding heartbeat from all the sprinting, now slowing down, he began to speak of his master plan. "Okay, here's the plan. Yamato, keep a lookout and place some wire around the remaining trees and stumps closest to the cliff so that they intersect with each other. Shino, keep your bugs within the forest grounds so they don't move out of the trap once they're in. Kiba, you and me will take out Sasuke's bodyguards. That leaves Sai and Sakura to distract them the moment we can hold them in." "What about me and Hinata-chan?" Naruto questioned as he felt that he and Hinata were left out of the loop. Seeing this, Yamato made an appropriate task for Naruto. He then slowly walked to Naruto and then placed his hands upon the blonde's shoulders. With a serious yet thoughtful gaze falling upon the puzzled blonde's face, he then told him, "You're going to set off the trap and capture Sasuke. In the confusion, it will be hard for us to move, but with your Kage Bunshins, you have a better chance of taking Sasuke before they have the chance to move in for the kill," he said with all seriousness. He handed over to Naruto a tagged kunai for him to use. Grasping this weapon, Naruto looked at Yamato, his cerulean eyes meeting his deep brown ones. Then he nodded in acknowledgement, and moved in point to do his part of the grand plan. Hinata, however, knew that Naruto was as serious as he could be and wished to help him fulfill his task. A look of determination shone on her face. Her timid heart, though struggled for a moment, but eventually submitted to her will. As she turns to join Naruto in his hiding spot, Yamato, unknowingly to her, grabbed her by the shoulder. This surprised her and caused her heart to beat faster. Her breathing became deeper as she felt the warm hands of Yamato. Yamato could only say to her what was objective, as this was what was logged into his mind after years of self-discipline and much battlefield experience. And so, that he did as he spoke to her. "Hinata, please help Naruto. He needs you to guide him. Not just in this mission, but also after. He might become reckless. I know he is capable on his own, but someone needs to make sure he doesn't do anything too rash that it could cost him the team. And from my position in the plan, I might not make it in time to stop him. Can you do this?" he said to her. A shocked Hinata turned her head around to face the dead serious Jounin. Though she was embarrassed, she nonetheless closed her eyes and smiled with her face blooming like a rose. Her smile in turn infectiously caused Yamato to smile as well. Yamato now felt that Hinata understood what her task was and was prepared to do it despite her emotional and psychological state. She wasn't always the shy, reserved type he imagined her to be. He realized that despite her appearance, she was a strong person who was willing to do whatever it took to protect those she loved and cared for and was committed to the mission. With that, Hinata faced her head forward and leapt off in search of Naruto. Naruto then was surprised to see Hinata by his side. Of course, Hinata explained that it was an order from Yamato Taicho. Though in her heart, she would gladly join him anyway, as she no longer wished to succumb to her weak-willed persona forever. In her mind, only one thought kept reverberating. It's been so long since I've seen him, I want to do things right this time. Who knows where he would run off to this time? I don't want to regret not doing what I could have done before he left, not anymore. End of flashback. Back in real time, Sasuke and his group hurriedly pushed towards the field ahead of them to avoid capture from the group behind him. They're still chasing us, the troubled redhead in Sasuke's team said. They had sprinted much faster than before to escape the clutches of their captors. Unknowingly, into the trap set before them, a concerned look was showing on the face of the tallest one in Sasuke's group. Aside from the black coat, he wore gray tattered pants and no clothing on his top half, which revealed his chiseled, battle-scarred body. On his head, silver hair raised to the sky though slightly brushed back. He also had a diamond-shaped tattoo on his left hand. Overall, aside from his size, there was nothing very distinct about him. As such, some people easily ignore him. This man, who began piecing together the events that are happening to them at the moment, voiced out to their leader, "I think this is a trap. We should." Before the deep-voiced man could continue his sentence, they already landed on the ground near the cliffs. An ominous breeze could be felt in the air as they carefully searched around for their pursuers or any impending danger that may have been laid ahead of them. To their right, a huge pit with nothing but darkness at the bottom, implying a depth they cannot escape, an obvious trap that must be avoided. Behind them, the edge of the forest was lined with dying trees. As they grew closer to the cliff, in front of them was the steep mountainside brimming with rocks and boulders. A good hiding spot for an ambush and a potential trap as well. To their left was a pile of stumps and broken trees that were not caused by any man. A storm had occurred, they thought, at seeing the conditions of that side of the forest. As they looked really hard, Sasuke spotted a shining object gleaming on the left side of his eye. As he turned his head to look, the object passed by in front of him. While reflexively following the path of the object, his eyes opened wider with every millisecond. It was a kunai just 3 centimeters away from his face. As it zoomed past him, it hit a rock on the grassy field. Upon closer inspection, it had a tag on it that started to burn up like a dynamite wick. Seeing this, all 4 members attempted to nimbly leap away from the impending danger. Their attempts failed as the earth itself reached for their legs and grabbed them with a tight grip. My technique was right on target. I might not be able to hold them for long though, Yamato thought from a hidden location as he kept a tight grip of concentration for the moment to give his teammates the necessary time to commence the plan. As Sasuke's team panicked, Kakashi saw this chance and raised the end of the wire he was pulling, and it immediately revealed itself from the grassy field. The wire revealed that it had several tags on it that lined up the hexagonal shape of the wires tied together. Sasuke did not flinch at this despite him being caught in this successful trap. He remained cold, calm, and calculating. After a second, he then barked at his team, "Stay close to me, I'll get us out." His orders cut through their hearts like a knife through the water. They immediately ducked in position as much as they could, though their feet were still stuck in the ground. The tags then exploded, leaving a cloud of smoke around the area. Seizing this opportunity, they began their assault in the smoke. Kiba and Akamaru leaped from the grassy plain, and in midair, Akamaru transformed into a clone of Kiba, and both began to spin wildly. Getsuga, his command, made them spin into 2 cyclones as they dived in the smoke. Kakashi wasted no time either, as he raised his forehead protector to reveal his left eyelid, which had a vertical scar that ran down to his mask. When he opened it, it revealed a crimson eye with 3 tomos that encircled his pupil. He then blurred through several hand seals. When he finished the last one, he raised his right hand just a fist apart from his chest. The sounds of sharp crackling could be heard as it became a visible ball of pure lightning. Raikiri. He then charged at breakneck speed into the smoke, with right hand leading the way. As quickly as he could, Sai started to draw several lions on his scroll and made several hand seals, and finished by shouting the words, "Choji Giga." As soon as he finished the incantation, the many drawings of lions came to life and charged straight through the smoke. In cohesion with his attack, Sakura grabbed a nearby boulder and threw it at the trees behind the smoke, allowing the prepared broken trees to release the bugs of Shino that flew into the smoke as well. This action also made sure Sasuke could not escape from the forest behind them as well. As the plan now materialized, Hinata decided to check things out using her special ability to see through the hazy mist of gunpowder and dust. She made the necessary hand seals and finished the incantation with the word, "Byakugan." With that word, the veins of her eyes now throbbed and tightened, revealing themselves for all to see. Her gaze sharpened as she looked hard into the smoke. Her vision transformed from technicolor into black and white. But with this change of vision color, she now could see farther and closer than eagles can. As she looked into the smoke, she pulled on Naruto's coat and spoke to him. "And Naruto? Is that Sasuke?" she questioned in utter distress with wide open eyes. She gripped his coat even tighter at what she saw through her telescopic eyes. Naruto understood at what she saw, for he saw it firsthand at the Valley of the End. Feeling her fear, he grabbed her hand and calmly reassured her. "It's all right, Hinata. His bark is worse than his bite," he said soberly to her. Feeling the valor in him that she always saw in him, she too became courageous by the inspiration of Naruto's words. Hinata then joined him in his assault on the mist of smoke. When the smoke finally cleared, the rest of team was shocked by the form of Sasuke that sent chills down their spines, as Kakashi's electrically charged arm was halted dead in its tracks, and Kiba and his dog Akamaru's team attack completely stopped by what looks like a giant brown pair of hands. Underneath those hands were the other three teammates of Sasuke. Sasuke himself was the one who shielded them from the onslaught of both attacks from Kakashi and Kiba. As Sasuke brings his head upward, his features have altered drastically. His coat burned from the explosive tags, and his GI burned as well, revealing his now dark skin. His hair was a shade of light blue, and reached the middle of his spine. On his face was a black tattoo-like cross marking, and his eyes glowed red with the infamous triple tomo on each eye known as the Sharingan. Sasuke's unusually shaped wings opened up and retracted behind him, hung like cloth on a coat hanger. The monster in his inner reflection now became his outer one. Kakashi and Kiba jumped back and allowed Sai's lions to attack while Sasuke's guard was down. Sasuke predicted this, and used his Chidori Nagase to eradicate the ink-based beasts and the stony prison hobbling their feet. Not noticing the bugs on their backs, they began to take fighting stances. Sakura leaped from the cliff heading straight towards the fray. Her left arm recoiled back as she ran towards the battlegrounds. When she got within arm range, in one flowing motion, she twisted her right side, causing her right arm to recoil and charge her fist, and finally leaping to give a right straight punch to the largest one. The deep-voiced man then leapt towards the right, barely avoiding the devastating punch that landed on the ground, leaving a huge crater on the point of impact from Sakura. This of course alarmed the troubled one beside him when the assault started, especially since this attack killed the remaining smoke screen that was blinding them. This made her voice out in alarm. "Yugo, are you alright?" the troubled one asked in despair. Realizing the potential threat in front of him, Yugo, the deep-voiced man, cautiously fought the pink-haired strong arm in front of him. Just a couple of milliseconds had gone by before they all snapped to attention to commence their battle. The next set of blows would determine who was ready to fight and who was ready to die. Bugs erupted from the ground in an attempt to engulf Team Sasuke. Sasuke then activated his Chidori Nagase once more and eradicated the bugs and Kiba and Akamaru's second assault. Kakashi's fight. The cynical one, with his right arm poised, reached for the object burdening his back. As he reached out to grasp what looks like a handle, Kakashi, with a burst of speed, assaulted with a kunai in his right hand, attempting to lunge it at his opponent. Seeing this, the cynical one quickened his draw and met Kakashi's kunai with his now drawn weapon. The sound of metal could be heard clashing like the sound of the hammer of a blacksmith during a forge. Kakashi, while guarding the weapon's attack with his kunai, said in shock to his adversary, "That's Zabuza's weapon. You took it from his grave. Who are you?" It was a sword that was the height of a man, and the width of its blade was the length of its master's forearm. The only other unique thing about this sword was that it had a crescent-shaped area just below the center of the blade. He questioned the man as he knew that the previous owner of that weapon had died several years ago, and no one aside from his team knew where his sword was placed. That is, unless he had a connection somehow to Zabuza, its previous master. Upon hearing the question of his adversary, the cynical one just smirked and smiled, revealing his sharpened dagger-like teeth. Kakashi, now realizing what he's up against, leaped away and formed several hand seals and shouted, "Futon Daitopa!" A huge blast of wind came crashing into the enemy, which sent him flying back into the broken trees behind him. As the cynical one fell back first into the trees, Yamato then blurred through some hand seals, and when he finished, wood from the fallen trees where the cynical one landed grappled him. A spark occurred from the various tags that surrounded the snake-like wooden branches. Before he could wake up into consciousness, a huge explosion burned down the fallen man. All that was left was the huge sword lying on the ground. Kyuso Suigetsu was careless, Sasuke thought as he looked upon the remains. It was clear he was outnumbered and had fallen into their hands only to await prison in Konoha when they would inevitably be captured. Hinata's fight. As Sasuke came to his senses from his brief rant about his fallen comrade, he felt a heavy and sharp pain to his left side. The pain felt like he was being shredded continuously by a meat grinder. As he turned to look, he saw it was Naruto using one of his trademark techniques, the Rasengan, a ball of pure energy that tears to shreds in multiple areas on one location of whatever it hits. This attack caused him to fumble back on the dirt and fall on one knee while clutching his rope-burned left ribs. Before he could recompose, another attacker came at him. Before he could react, she stopped just right in front of him and went into a fighting stance where her left foot was slightly in front of her right, and her right hand coiled to her right side and her left slightly outstretched. Her eyes sharpened with fierce determination like that of a tiger. With absolute focus and her Byakugan still active, she then announced the incantation of her attack. Juken Hyaka Nijuhachi Tsum no Tora. In a flash, using her grace and flexibility, she sent 20 claw-mimicking palm strikes to the chest, 50 to the solar plexus, 14 to the right and left arms, a sweeping back, right, step kick to the back of the right leg and uses it to leap sideways to perform a graceful combination of a double spin while delivering 40 strikes to the entire backside starting from the heel up and while still in midair. She grabs his left shoulder and swings her body weight like a gymnast and sits on his shoulders facing him front, delivering him 3 strikes to the head causing him to lose balance, allowing her to back flip so she lands on the ground, with both arms coiled back, her right foot back and her left foot to lead the entire body. When she makes the step, she releases a double palm strike to the chest, sending him flying to his troubled red-headed, making them both collapse into the ground. Seeing the full-scale damage and area coverage of the technique, Naruto was amazed at how much she has grown in the 2.5 years spent away. The once shy and timid Hinata he knew to faint, blush and stutter is now a powerful, independent, and courageous woman. As he dusted off his astonishment of her skills, he was surprised to see Sasuke standing up, completely unfazed by the attack combination and regenerating from the implosive destructive force of the Juken strikes and the grinded Rasengan damaged area with every second. Sasuke started to open up his wings and began to hover slightly above the ground. Sasuke, not wasting any time and effort, flapped his wings and charged at the duo. And with his electrically charged sword drawn at his right hand, he made a swift side slash which Naruto ducked from and Hinata nimbly sidestepped to the right avoiding the weapon. Sasuke wasn't done there though. While still in motion, with his right wing, he slaps them hard causing them both to fly directly in the pit. With eyes open wide, Kiba attempts to grab them both with utter failure, as the pit now glowed red with a magical seal that kept others from entering and the two from getting out. Naruto! Hinata! He screamed as he saw his 2 friends fall further into the darkness. With everyone's attention drawn to the 2 falling, Sasuke used this rare opportunity to escape their clutches once more. Catching the attention of his other teammates, he then said, "Now is our chance, let's move Yugo and Karen Ga," Sasuke said to the deep-voiced man and the troubled redhead, taking the opportunity at hand while still holding his side. The damage that both fighters gave to him now started to take effect. "Kyuso, that was really painful, Ayak," the wounded raven-haired boy thought as he gripped his bleeding side and shivered from the intense pain of Hinata's strikes. Karen, seeing his badly beaten state, held Sasuke's left arm over her while jumping off with him and Yugo following behind carrying a bottle of water and Sujetsu's sword. Sai attempted to follow close behind but was held back by Shino as he grabbed him and told him, "Not now, Naruto and Hinata are the first priority. Besides, I have them tagged with my bugs already." The rest of the team then stood over the pit with Sakura attempting to break the invisible seal, all to no avail. They all stared into the thickening darkness. Hopelessness filled their eyes and tears streamed forth from Sakura's own. They could not go in to help them. Neither could the 2 in the blackness come out with such a strong barrier over it. Yamato, however, remembered something from his early days concerning this situation. With all the emotionless charged words he could muster, he then told the helpless lambs, "I have heard of this pit. They say that, before civilization was formed, a huge battle ensued between the 4 gate guardians of the continent, and that the one who won that battle was buried here and that his soul will not rest until his thirst is fulfilled by the souls of true hearts. It was also said that when a suitable soul was found, a magical, unbreakable barrier would form over the entrance, and he would live in the chosen sacrifice and would eternally feed on his or her soul until he could regenerate and be reborn. It was just a fairy tale, a legend until now. I never knew it actually exists." All 6 of them tried hard to swallow this information as they were still traumatized at how their friends were just thrown into a disaster like this. Trying to make sense of it all, Kakashi voiced out his curious mind. But who was chosen, Naruto or Hinata? Could it be both of them? He had a point. It could be that only one of them, or both, or even the unlikely chance that they were taken by mistake. But despite this, the hole in each of their wounded hearts could think only one thing. This is unreal, it's a mistake. But Yamato could not see how Kakashi's statement could matter at a dreadful time as this. He then turned to Kakashi. With nothing but the pessimistic yet unbridled truth, his lips formed words that lacerated the team even more than ever. "Does it matter? Either way, they both are now forever damned down there. The seal isn't a regular seal. Its powers are arcane to us. It might be a better time to retreat at the moment." He was right despite the bitter taste of the inference of Yamato. They knew full well that none of them could save their friends that have fallen in a forever blackening pit with a monster waiting at end to consume their souls. To them, death would have been better than the unknown knowledge of whether they were safe or not from the thing that awaits them at the bottom. But one thing was certain, that darkness and depth of it was definitely a fate worse than death. The next path. Darkness, it was all that his cerulean eyes could peer into. Shadows now present to his eyes, was the image imprinted on his mind. Haze, the form began to show distinct shape and color though he couldn't make out exactly what it was. A woman, his eyes now fixated by the darkness, could see the figure before him. His gaze did not leave him as he saw a beautiful woman with long, silky blue hair and lavender eyes met his with a look of concern. Her face was sporting a mild pink color as she kept repeating his name. Naruto-kun, wake up, Naruto-kun. It's me, Hinata. Are you alright? The soft echo of her voice started to reverberate in his mind like a ripple on a lake. He then snapped back into reality to realize what had happened. From the storeroom of his mind, He replayed what had just happened to them several minutes ago. Flashback. Sasuke swung his right wing at Naruto, which caused Naruto to be blown back from the impact. Unfortunately, Hinata was behind the blonde in midair. Naturally, she was swept by the impact of his body colliding with hers. Both were pushed back so far that they began to fall into the pit behind Sasuke as soon as the force's acceleration had reached its peak and began to die down. Both fell, screaming as they were in a seemingly never-ending freefall into the abyss below. Seeing the abyss below starting to close in as they plummeted, Naruto began to take action and reached and grabbed Hinata close to his chest as he hugged her tightly and turned around so that his back was facing the abyss. Hinata blushed at the awkward position she was in, but soon it faded away as she felt they were being tossed and turned as Naruto took the full blows of the outcropping rocks in the crevice that could have hit Hinata and impaled her. As she peeked over her guardian's right shoulder, she screamed to Naruto of the impending danger before them. "Naruto-kun! To your right!" Her warnings, however, did not fall upon deaf ears. Hearing this, Naruto quickly opened his right hand. Reflexively, a Kage Bunshin of him appeared, began to mold with both of his hands the circular ball of energy that was forming in Naruto's right hand. Once the shape was complete, Naruto faced the impending danger, right hand leading the way, and shouted, "Rasengan!" The ball of energy now bashed through the rocks ahead like a hammer on a windowpane. When the technique had finally expired, they were caught unprepared by the clumps of boulders at the bottom. It was too late for Naruto to create another Rasengan. Bracing himself, he turned his backside again for Hinata not to take the impact. Adrenaline began pouring through her veins. Within a heartbeat, she left her tight grip on her blonde savior, and outstretched her arms and spun her body like a ballerina while shouting the word Kaiten. The incantation made its effect as a sphere of pure energy encased them and spun in the direction of her spinning body, effectively grinding the roughly shaped boulders into very fine grains of sand. When the technique had finished, they fell directly below the sand and into a cavern where they both collapsed. Unconscious they were, but safe because of the sand that cushioned their fall. End of flashback. With his reminiscence of what had happened now finished, he sat straight up, causing a now relieved Hinata to sigh in gladness that he was fine. With love-stricken eyes, she smiled and blushed as she looked at him lovingly. Feeling certain uneasiness, Naruto motioned to talk to her. "What's wrong, Hinata-chan? Is there something on my face?" the very puzzled Naruto asked. Surprised, Hinata quickly but shyly attempted to sway the conversation away so as to not reveal her well-concealed thoughts to Naruto. No. And nothing's wrong. I am just glad you're fine, that's all," she said as she stuttered and bowed her head in embarrassment, as she bloomed once again. She was glad though that Naruto is still as dull as ever concerning feelings and emotions. As she attempted once again to talk with him, the young blonde then quickly went over to her. She was startled by this turn of events. Her heart began to rise to her throat as her wide-eyed face began to turn red. Naruto, more concerned at what he saw, spoke in hurried concern. "Hinata-chan, you're hurt. Are you okay? Let me bandage that," said the noble blonde as he rushed to her aid. Hinata snapped out of her worried conscience to look at what Naruto was implying had happened to her. When she looked at her right side, she saw a diagonal streak of red that started to flow from that side. She then knew that she was hurt from the fall into this cavern. She then began to contest to him, saying, "It's all right. I am fine. It's just a scratch. What about why you, Naruto-kun? You took the full blow of the pit house, see come you're not hurt?" She spoke in utter astonishment at how he was completely unglazed even though he took the direct blows from the fall. Naruto then gave a sad look as he looked down, realizing that there was no escaping the thought as he remembered why it was that way. She won't understand. I can't tell her, he thought to himself as he knew very well what disaster it could bring to those who knew. In order to lock away himself from that conversation, he then looked at her with a fox grin as he went over to bandage her wounds, saying, "I'm fine, Hinata-chan. It's always like this. As long as I get some decent rest, I can be fully healed in no time. You should be more concerned with your wounds," he said as he began to disinfect and clean up her wound. Hinata was not concerned with that though. To her, a minor flesh wound was nothing compared to never being able to voice out to him. More so, that he could not completely tell her anything. She now had her chance to be with him, yet he stayed so distant from her and kept things to himself. She then spoke out using all the courage she could muster and said, "And Naruto-kun, do you distrust me that much?" These words, though soft and mellow when spoken, pierced straight into his heart. He never expected that to come from one of his most trusted friends. He trusted everyone with his life, yet somehow she couldn't see that. In distress, he replied, "It's nothing like that, Hinata-chan. I really do trust you. You're one of my best friends even though we haven't gotten to know each other that well yet," he said to the blue-haired woman in front of him, while putting up a smile and ridiculously waving his hands around. Seeing this, Hinata then sighed in relief again. Feeling that he managed to save his relationship with her, he then turned over to look through his belt to see if there were any more medical supplies with which he could help his female companion with. As he looked through, he attempted to speak more to get over his nervousness of the situation so he could calm down. "Let's see here, Hinata-chan, I think I can help heal your wounds with the stuff here. Good thing Ero-sen always packs some emergency medical supplies in here. After we heal up your wounds, let's try to find a way out so we can regrow. He could not finish the last sentence when he turned around to face her. His heart began beating as fast as when he was sparring with his master Jiraiya during their 2.5-year absence from the village. His body grew hotter and his grip on the bottle carrying the medical supply collapsed. His face started to blush as he was awestruck at what his cerulean eyes had gazed upon. Hinata began to remove the bloody white coat and jacket, revealing her true form after those years the young blonde had been away. She wore a black tube that covered only her developed bust, revealing her slim yet curvaceous body. Curves were seen on her body in all the right areas. She had the body that even models would be envious of, as her white skin complemented if not enhanced her sensual, womanly body. To Naruto, he thought he was in a dream. It always struck him that Sakura was beautiful, but as he gazed upon the stunning vixen in front of him, he never imagined that this shy, strange girl was now a beautiful flower in full bloom. All he could think of as he saw her was, beautiful, very beautiful. As he blanked out of his senses, blood dripped out of his nose. This caught the attention of Hinata. She panicked and turned steaming red in the face as she immediately faced her back towards him and attempted to cover her fleshy front as she said, "Ayano, why your nose?" She stuttered as she told him in embarrassment. Her heart had leaped out of her mouth. She never felt this embarrassed before. Naruto then realized that his nose began to flow with blood and he quickly covered it with some tissue from his pocket and turned around, almost imitating Hinata's usual reactions to these kinds of situations, looking up with a very red face. Naruto, still recalling the task he needed to accomplish, he started to ask Hinata, "Ayano? Hinata, is it okay if I can bandage your wound?" For the first time, Naruto stuttered like Hinata as he spoke to her. She was quite surprised as Naruto was never this nervous around her. She felt that their roles had somehow been reversed. Wow. He's stuttering like me. Is he that embarrassed? I guess he's that innocent. But that's a good thing though. After all, he is Naruto. Inwardly, she began to laugh as she thought about his innocent nature. In an attempt to tease him further, she decided to make her voice more sensual to her partner's ears. She then seductively replied to him as she turned her head to face him. "I don't mind at all, go ahead and do what you want with me, Naruto-kun," she said with an added wink and a sly smile. Her eyes showed an obvious lust for him, rather a hunger for him. Naruto was very embarrassed at this point. Not only was she luscious to his eyes, she was also teasing him and feigning innocence. He had never met a woman like this before who could be so foxy, yet so innocent and pure. His flustered face showed how uncomfortable he was with this. Is this really Hinata? This feels weird. Why am I getting all riled up inside? No. Keep calm. As she has a W wound. She needs healing. Though Hinata just laughed at this, Naruto kept his emotions as controlled as possible as he went closer to her to bandage her wound. Though not fatal, he was still concerned for her well-being. When he finally started to bandage her wound, his heart beat even more rapidly than before as he saw some of her skin in curves. His lungs began to tighten as he smelled her fragrance. She smelled like the Konoha fire lily that grows during the summer. It was an irresistible scent. His hands started developing a mind of their own as he struggled to lift his hands from her body when he had finished. She's too beautiful. No. Self-control, Naruto. Self-control, Naruto thought to himself. His obvious battle against his flesh made her blush and chuckle as she saw it as nothing more than silliness. All done, Hinata-chan. Could you put back your jacket on, please? He said as he blushed more than ever. Hinata nodded in acknowledgement, and did as he had asked of her. I guess even Naruto-kun has his limits. Not that I mind though, wait. What are you thinking? The naughty girl thought as she zipped up her jacket. When she felt she was in control once more, she turned around and started talking to the love of her life. And Naruto-kun, where do you think we are? She stuttered as she reverted back to her former persona. I'm not sure myself. But this place is quite amazing, the young blonde replied as he looked around in amazement. As they both looked around at where they were, they realized how beautiful the cavern was. Lining the cavern were several gigantic pillars of columns that were carved with beautiful engravings, as well implying that people have lived here before. In fact, so many things in that cave had man-made structures that were carved directly from the cave itself, or the boulders and crystals that were extracted from the cave were used to form them. A crystal-clear river flowed in the center of the cave. It wasn't salt water, but it was drinkable, as Naruto proved it when he drank some. But what was most amazing was that the ceiling wasn't dark as the crystal outcroppings sparkled, illuminating the room. When they looked up to see it, it was just like gazing at the universe. At the same time, they both spoke up and said, "Wow. It's amazing." It truly was amazing. It was as if they were looking directly at the night sky and there was no stony ceiling hovering above the astral plane. While they gazed at this marvelous wonder of nature, unknowingly to both of them, they were now holding hands as they explored the entire cave. Somehow, being together in this situation made things much easier for them to get such closeness. Hinata was slightly worried though as they ventured in. But Naruto, who still had that childlike boldness against fear, grabbed her by the hand and spoke to her. "It's all right. I'll be here to protect you if anything happens," he said with his fox grin all over his face. Hinata had never been this close to him ever. It never occurred to her that such a situation could ever happen to her. It was like a dream come true, especially since she hasn't fainted even once. Her heart began to trust him more and more as they explored through the megastructures and castle-like buildings. It very well reminded them of Konoha and how the planning of the structures was very similar. This thought had triggered the play button on their childhood years. As they both reminisced of their lives during their childhood, she started to gain confidence and began to open up to him more. Naruto is holding my hand, yet I'm not scared or worried. I've never felt this way before. It's so wonderful to be next to him like this. It's just him and me, walking side by side into the unknown, she thought to herself as a faint blush began to emerge on her face. Wow! I've never seen anything like it. Everything here is beautiful, the excited blonde said as he grinned at the wonderful sight. It is, isn't it? The shy Hyagahira said, still stuttering. As the happy couple continued walking, Naruto looked over the young lady walking beside him. She was a sight to behold as he stared into her fully developed form. He then timidly said, Yup. By the way, Hinata-chan, how did why you get so fit? The young lady then blushed as she explained to him. Do you remember when we went on that mission to find the Baikochu bug? The young blonde nodded and smiled as he said, How can I forget? You were amazing during that mission. After that mission, I've been training myself hard every day. That's how I got this fit. Do you like it, Naruto-kun? She said as she winked and blushed at him while swaying her body more sensually. Her actions made the young blonde even more uneasy and blushed much more. Why yeah. Vivi very much. What did I just say? What's wrong with you? How come I'm so nervous? I've never felt this way before towards her. She's a really good friend, right? But is she more? Is something wrong, Naruto-kun? Her sudden statement snapped the young blonde out of his trance. Never has Naruto been this flustered because of the young woman walking beside him. Thinking on his feet, Naruto replied, And nothing, Hinata-chan. Actually, I was remembering the time during that mission when I saw a beautiful girl doing ballet on the water when we made camp. She was so sexy and elegant. I thought I was dreaming at first until I fell in the lake and she ran off. I never got to see her clearly though. Hinata blushed as she remembered that time. She then made a weak smile. That girl you saw, that was me practicing. The two blushed as they looked down in opposite directions. Really? Wow, I never expected that. Then again, why you're full of surprises, said the now timid blonde as he began to blush even brighter. I never expected you to see me that night. Especially since I was naked that time and just finished taking a bath, the lavender-eyed girl said as she flustered a visible crimson on her face. Her cerulean-eyed counterpart did the same when he heard her words. There was a few seconds of silence before Naruto quickly faced her and smiled. This caught the timid girl off guard as she gazed into his eyes. You know, Hinata-chan, you're not stuttering anymore. In fact, you've been smiling the whole time and acting more confident. Hinata's eyes grew wider as she realized what he said. He was right though. Somehow, she was growing out of her shell after spending some time with him. She then smiled even wider. I guess so, thanks to you, Naruto-kun. Yes, thanks to him, I'm able to be this happy. Hinata's thoughts were clear as the sky. She really enjoyed being with him. Yet she had no idea if he enjoyed it as well. Her heart has now become tranquil enough for her to truly speak her mind with him just when they walked straight into the balcony of the largest structure in the cave. She then asked him as she turned her head towards him. Naruto-kun, are you enjoying this? She asked with a smile. Her smile became infectious and caused him to smile as well. He then replied, Yup, every moment of it. It's very breathtaking. Too bad we can't come back here though, it would have been really nice to take Sakura-san to see this. Her heart sank as she heard those painful words from our young blonde hero. She felt as if she had died and resurrected to die once more. She clutched her chest as a sad expression filled her face. But her resolve was not broken. She then turned to face him. He in turn, predicting a question would be darted at him, faced her as well. Time seemed to stop as they both looked each other eye to eye. Both gazes were met, and it felt like a star in the universe was either going to be born or die. She formed her lips to speak while in her mind a thought raced. I knew it was too good to be true, but even if that's the case, I don't want to regret not taking the chance anymore. This moment, these feelings, I want this to be real and not a dream. I want to be real to him so that he could be real to me. I can tell he's been putting on a mask every time he's reminded of his past. I want to be there for him no matter what she thought before she slowly released her sealed lips. Her heart raced with her mind as she began to utter words she had always wanted to say to him for a long time. Naruto-kun, she said as she waited on him to reply. She started to blush and dropped both her arms to her side. Feeling puzzled once more, the young blonde then asked, What is it, Hinata-chan? This was it. It was a battle between her heart and mind. Her heart despaired to tell him her feelings for him, but her mind shuddered at the thought of receiving the reply. As such, she couldn't argue with her low self-esteem, until now. It was a do-or-die situation where she knew it could very well hurt her if she found out the answer. With her heart worn on her sleeves, she then spoke. What am I to you, Naruto-kun? Naruto was surprised by this. For all his life with her and his peers, he saw her as a good friend and nothing more. But as he looked closer at her, he could see she was obviously hiding something that she never told him before. Before he could say anything, Hinata continued, I know you have a lot of secrets to hide. I know this because I know when you put up a fake smile because you never grew up with a family. But as your good friend, no, as more than a friend, I want to share you mine so you don't have to worry anymore, so that you can have a friend to lean on to, so that you can feel that there is someone who cares for you. His eyes grew wide at what he heard. More than a friend was a very strong word that triggered several swirls of emotions in his heart. He felt his lungs once again tighten. He became very anxious yet confused at what she meant. Hinata spent no time for him to ponder on. She then started to lay out everything to him. Naruto-kun, I've always admired you. You were my inspiration. You gave me the courage to go on and be myself. I always stalked you because I could never muster the courage to talk to you. But you were always able to do so, to talk to me. I've always enjoyed being with you, even though sometimes you act very silly. For so long it's been this way. And it hurts my heart whenever I see you constantly try to gain Sakura-san's heart. Because of that, I've trained hard to be better than her. I always wanted to know you more and find out everything about you and be with you, though I had a hard time doing so. Naruto had never expected this before. That someone could actually like him for him. It was right there in front of him. Always it has been this way, yet he never noticed. His thoughts came crashing into his reality like lightning on a rock. How could I have missed this all this time? All those times she was there stalking me, helping me, and attempting to comfort me, of course, like that time just before my match in the Chunin exams, or that mission to find the Baikochu. Wait. But then that means before he could speak, he paused to hear her next words. For if he was right, it would drastically change their relationship forever. Naruto-kun, I love you very much. And I always have and always will, no matter what. She finally shouted out her true feelings to him. The endeavor, however, caused so much stress on her that she was about to collapse until the now speechless blonde caught her in his two arms. He knelt down to the ground, clutching her in his arms, both of them blushing, as his cerulean eyes met her lavender ones. He then was able to regain some consciousness to speak, as he finally was able to digest all this information in his heart. Hinata, what do I say to her? This is all so sudden. Yet somehow, it feels meant to be. I think I'm falling, but it's so fast. Stopping him from crafting any more words, she then put her middle and index finger to cover his lips. With a smile of content, she said, Hinata, it's all right. You don't have to answer. But I needed to for a long time. It's been tugging my heart when I saw you again. I'm very happy to have been able to tell you. I hope you are satisfied to hear the truth in your heart. Because my heart is now satisfied. I told you something would happen to them. I'm still questioning if it is romantic enough, though I really want to make it as romantic as possible so that this and the next chapter have a tremendous impact on the story itself. Many are going to kill me in the next chapter, one can guarantee it. I actually felt sad when I thought of it. But it's a better way to make it progress with a little drama. A new journey begins. Naruto's heart began to pound faster as his mind couldn't completely comprehend the overflowing love that Hinata had for him. He began to grip her tighter and brought her face closer to his. They both blushed as he came closer to her. She never dreamed that this could ever happen to her. It was a fantasy turned real as the love of her life was falling for her. This is it, Naruto-kun, I love you, please accept my love. Hinata's mind raged with this thought. As for the young blonde, however, it was an overwhelming moment as he realized that the true and faithful love he was looking for was woven together into the form of this bluish-black-haired woman laying in his arms, waiting for him with an unwrapped heart ready to receive his steadily growing affections for her. I can't believe this is happening. Hinata-chan loves me for me. Naruto's thoughts were a swirl of emotions. Their lips were now poised towards one another as his cerulean eyes met hers. This was it. Their feelings and relationship would now be forever sealed together with this amorous act of love. As their hearts now beat as one, Naruto then turned away from this time of beauty with his back facing her, leaving a deprived, disappointed yet confused soul. Hinata felt she killed a part of herself because of her actions. With a heart full of regret and watering eyes, she then asked of him, Why? Is it because of me? I'm going too fast, aren't I? Her question astounded the blonde, for he knew the reason was quite contrary to her question of concernment. He then somberly explained to her, It's not you, Hinata, it's me. I don't want to end up hurting you. I have a lot going on right now and I'm still confused about all this, honestly. With a sigh of relief, she then wiped the tears streaming from her bluish-white eyes as she leaned on his back, wrapping her gentle arms around his stomach. She then softly confessed to him, I guess things got out of hand too quickly. It was too good to be true. After all that I said to you and acted while we were here, it feels like it's not the real me that's been doing all this. Her words, however, did not connect in Naruto's mind. He then turned around and held her by the shoulders as he said to her, I don't think so. I think that the Hinata that I see now is the real one who gave comfort to me and tried to be there for me and fight with me all the way here. That Hinata wasn't afraid to be herself. That Hinata was the one I admired the most. I really don't know how to explain it, but to me the you I see now is the you I've always wanted. Like the violent flood of a broken dam, his words had shattered the barrier to this passionate woman's heart. She could no longer control herself, and dove into him, while hugging him so tight that movement could no longer be done by him. Seeing the situation he was in, he blushed, but gladly returned her affections for him with his own hug. Both hearts beat as one. But so did their minds, connected and entwined together as Naruto and Hinata thought in unison. "Hinata-chan, I'm so very happy right now. It's like a fantasy, like a fairy tale where the prince meets his princess, and they both fall in love. Yes, love. For so long I've waited for him to accept me and love me for me. This is the greatest time of my life." A magical moment it was, as both were in each other's arms with Hinata's head buried in Naruto's chest as they hugged each other passionately. However, like all good things, they must come to an end. Unknown to the two lovebirds that were in this gloomy castle-like structure, the darkness released from its shadowy prison several creeping figures to wreak havoc and forever change this couple's destiny. In the shady hallways, if one would listen closely, the sound of silence wasn't the only thing that could be heard. In the midst of the eerie silence, the soft landing of metal upon the stony flooring echoed throughout the area. The noise resonated closer and closer towards the balcony where the lovebirds resided until it was now audible to their human ears. The bloodthirsty killing intent that emanated from the shadowy figures began to shock their spines into sudden awareness. With their hardened years of training, they sensed the impending danger and leapt back as they reached with their right hands for the pouch of kunai strapped to their right legs. Like the quick draw of a professional gunman, they threw their kunais with lethal aim on the walking figures in the dark and landed on their 2 feet with kunais drawn in a reverse grip as they prepared for combat. They knew very well that they got them, but were unprepared for what stepped through the light pouring in the balcony to meet them. It was nothing of this world. When the figures had revealed themselves in the light, the shinobi couple saw that they were nothing more than crimson-colored and bare samurai armors that were fastened together like there was an invisible soldier wearing them. Naruto wondered how such things could be possible. They were shinobi capable of great things, but completely unprepared by the ghastly sight before them. The armors, however, gave no time for him or his mate to ponder, as they wildly assaulted them with their steels swinging left and right. Being their agile selves, the pair leaped off and nimbly landed on the rooftops of the structures below the balcony. The armors gave chase as they followed them towards the streets until at a corner, they lost track of them. The walking shells of armor were confused as they looked left and right for them. Little did they know that above them were 2 falling bodies that landed on them with fist and foot outstretched to give them blow for blow as they commenced their counter-offensive on their would-be executioners. Hinata gave strike for swing as she blocked and countered each of their attacks with her own, giving double the dosage of damage which shattered their steel and armor alike. Naruto, in turn, danced around their blades and struck them down with full force like an uncontrollable hurricane. The steel of their swords seemed ineffective to these bags of flesh that toyed with them, as if they were nothing more than children swinging twigs at them, only to be broken with each assault that the pair made towards them. But the unfeeling Crimson warriors didn't relent from their assault as they began to surround them in hopes of at least touching them. In fact, they still vastly outnumbered them because some of their fallen comrades still got up from absorbing the damage made on them to continue fighting as if unfazed. The two were forced by the change of pace towards the center where they stood back to back. Both sharpened their senses as they focused with seriousness and a killing intent that neutralized their enemies. The rhythm of their battle would soon go in favor of these arcane warriors. "Looks like our first date wasn't completely romantic, Hinata-chan?" said the smirking blonde to his lavender-eyed counterpart. "I guess not," replied the focused Hinata. Feeling the need to gather information on their enemy, Hinata used the Byakugan in order to see what exactly their enemy was. Her paled face showed that they were more than meets the eye. This was reflected in her ghastly reply as she said, "This can't be happening. They're living souls in each of the armors. Real living ones complete with chakra coils." Her statement did not bode well for them. "How can you hit what you can't see?" was the dilemma until Naruto, while still back to back, noticed that some of the crumbling slabs of steel didn't get up at all from the blows Hinata sent them. With his fox grin written on his face at this realization, he formulated a plan as he whispered in Hinata's ears while blocking a downward slash with his kunai in his right hand as he dug his stance deeper by widening his legs more to completely halt the full power of the attack. Hinata prepared herself for his plan as she nodded to him, while guarding against a side slash towards the left side of her waist. Seizing this priceless chance, one of the armors came at them with a diagonal downward slash starting from left to right as he cleaved through both of their flesh, only to realize that they vanished into smoke. Confused once again, they looked around until it was too late for the phantom swordsman as they felt the chakra-enforced palm strikes from several clones of the kunoichi, and the blunt but efficient blows of Naruto's fists and kicks. His plan was deadly effective as they began to fall in their numbers. Using this sudden advantage, they broke through to get to a more advantageous position for them to fight in. They fought their way through the thick tide of empty steel as they pushed forward until they found themselves just in front of a red shrine gate. This gate was at the very top of the stone-carved steps at the end of the unknown street they had burst their way through. On its floor was an engraved circle that connected to an engraved kanji for love and the infinity symbol above it. These engraved symbols were also connected to a shallow ditch. Obviously, they were in a sacrificial pit, but nonetheless ignored it as they began to come up with a plan to fight off the now growing army of specter-possessed Japanese armor. Naruto stood as still as a statue with his gaze fixated at the massive core of otherworldly soldiers climbing the only leading stairway towards the couple. Seeing their enemies' sloppy defenses and crammed formation, Naruto leaped into the air and called out 30 Kage Bunshins in a way that one was close to another. The 30 clones of him began to each form a Rasengan in the right hand of the other. When they completed it in no less than a second, their free partner grabbed the armed ones and threw them directly at the armor spirits. With Rasengans spearheading headfirst into the thick mob of armors, they rained on them like the bombardment of artillery. When the remaining clones and the original landed, the clones took this forced opportunity and grabbed the steels of the fallen adversaries as they charged and gave steel for steel towards the broken lines of the Nightmare Warriors. This was as good as it could get, or so it would seem. Needless to say, wave after wave kept pouring in to devour our bold lovers. Kyuso, they just won't stay down, Naruto cursed as the army kept pacing forward. He then made 10 more clones that formed a pair of Rasengans in each hand and drove like a drill on the wall of steel before them. The last pair of the clones of 10 was an exception as they formed a much bigger one carried by the right hand of one and the left of the other as they charged into the fray screaming Otama Rasengan. When Hinata, while still in defensive stance, saw this, she then thought of an ingenious way to combine his and her techniques together in a combination that would literally annihilate their vastly superior foes. With her Byakugan still active, she then looked at Naruto with her vein-throbbing face and commanded him promptly, "Naruto-kun, I have an idea. Make 2 more clones and form the Otama Rasengan with you kneeling down in the center to support it." Hearing her clear commands, he did as she barked at him while kneeling on his left foot at the first stair below them with both arms risen up towards the sky, while the other 2 clones began shaping their weapon of mass destruction above their creator's hands. When the ball of swirling energy had fully formed at maximum concentration point, Hinata took her stance once more just arm's length behind the weapon as she took a deep breath. She focused her chakra towards her palms as she began the technique. She coiled her 2 palms into tiger fists once more with her right leg back and her left leg raised so that her knee is parallel to her midsection. With her poise complete, she then let her left foot down as she pushed hard her 2 arms forward while shouting, "Hak Hazenjiki!" A sudden blast of a pressurized mixture of air and chakra sent the giant ball of energy towards the unsuspecting crimson-colored steel-clad foes. It literally bulldozed the enemy and exploded into a mini maelstrom that grinded all those caught in its vacuum grip into dust. "Yada! We did it, Hinata-chan," he said joyfully as nothing from the rubble left behind twitched in the slightest bit. It was over. Serenity came like the peace before a storm until that storm followed after in the form of a new batch of the soul-bound armors came marching which dampened their relieved spirits. These ones however were different in that they had little openings for the emptiness of their shells to be seen. Their armor was plated in a more Western form though still retaining their Japanese structure. They even had the symbol of the Black Phoenix imprinted on their matching colored flags at their back and breastplate. They not only carried the same katana as their fallen comrades, but they even had large rectangular shields that covered them from neck to foot with the infinity symbol and kanji for love as its insignia. All that and there's still more? We must have defeated about a little over 5 battalions by now, the exhausted Hyuga shouted as she steeped herself in her juken stance. "I guess they want more then," the smiling blonde said as they gazed over the marching army. The army gave no room for remorse as they marched over the remains of their comrades to take the lives of the pair at the top of the stone-stepped shrine. Despite the continuous bravado that our favored heroes proved time and again to be effective upon these emotionless spirits, it seemed that their limits must be surpassed in order to even stand a chance against them. They steeled their hearts and calmed their minds to once again gamble with death. Naruto once again spoke to his female companion. "These must be the elite of the army. I bet if we manage to go through this, the boss will appear and we can be free of this almost eternal nightmare." His words were inspirational yet somewhat ineffective to his companion's ears as the enemy before them climbed their way to the top, stepping on broken steps and the bodies of their comrades. Gloom was all that they could imagine at this point. Picking up the sword of a nearby fallen foe, Naruto stood poised and ready to strike as he fell into a sloppy sword defensive position. Hinata stood firm as she braced herself to fend off the wild attacks that would definitely fall upon her. As the final moments before the massive melee began, Naruto then ran close to her and softly spoke. "It's all right, Hinata. We'll make it, I promise." With the death of his last sentence, came the death of another phantom soldier, as Naruto gave him a clean slice from the soul-disrupting blade. With the speed of the assault, they were given no chance to use any form of jutsus except taijutsu at this point. For Hinata, it was just like sparring with Tenten as her juken style was very effective on her armor-clad foes. Naruto, though not used to fighting with a sword, had no choice in the matter as it was the only thing aside from his Rasengan that could affect his opponents. "If I wasn't so tired and cramped by their numbers, I could make several more Kage Bunshins to even the odds." As the battle raged onward, they began to breathe heavily and their concentration now waned as beads of sweat flowed down their face. Naruto started to notice his hands twitching continuously. His thoughts began to gain weight as he began to think more out of context. "I've never fought this many opponents before. And to make matters worse, only this sword and Hinata's fighting style could actually affect them. Hinata and O. Keep focused. We're in the middle of a battle here. Now's not the time to." Before he could linger in his mind any further, he then felt a huge killing intent behind him. As the opponent before him attempted a strike, he immediately made a two-handed side slash from right to left and in one flowing motion, dashed backwards while changing his sword grip into a reversed one, and stabbed with his left hand the swordsman before a downward killing blow could have been sent to the young blonde. He smirked as he felt the blade pass through the phantom's heart, and out the other end until the katana guard made contact with his armor, and could move no further. The young blonde smirked again, knowing how he easily banished this emotionless soul to the depths of hell. But his sword took not just one life, but two instead. He felt something else had passed through the blade as he felt a familiar chakra signature suddenly die away fast. His heart beat furiously at the possibility of the worst to come. As he turned his head to look at where his sword had touched, he sighed in relief as he saw the blade skewered the crimson armor, crumbling into nothing more than heavy slabs of steel as the bond between soul and host was cut off. But his sigh of relief slowly became wide-eyed horror, as the same color on the armored phantom he killed was now flowing on the edge of the blade and on the jacket of Hinata. His heart died at that moment, and felt that time had slowed as he saw her fall into the shallow ditch that she was standing on. Only one word was permitted by his mouth to utter at that dark moment. That word was cried by his mouth as he screamed, Hinata. The hulking armors had cancelled their attack as they sheathed their swords and fell in line by the stairs. They then kneeled on their right knee with their right arm grasping their left one, their left still grasping their shield or supporting their right hand if they had none, and their heads bowed in acknowledgement as they chanted in chorus, the sacrifice, the sacrifice, the sacrifice. Naruto's world had been shattered at this point. Many lives were lost in his past, but none as this one who truly loved him for him. His heart sunk into the bottomless pit called sadness and despair as he dropped the tainted blade and clutched her in his shaking arms. The scarlet water began to taint his hands and soil his clothes as he hugged his dying bride-to-be and screamed in horror, "No! Why now, why? What have I done?" As he mourned over her fleeting life, the red water began to flow into the ditch that then filled the engraved areas on that altar. When the engraved symbols on the floor of the red shrine were filled to the brim with her blood, the space between the columns of the gate began to distort. When the remaining soldiers noticed this, they unsheathed their swords once again and raised it to the sky as they stopped their unison chants. The spatial distortion began to widen into a rip in the very fabric of time. It shone in a bright blue light until a figure came out walking towards the grieving blonde. He was a fiery red-haired young Bishonen of average stature. His eyes had the color of gold that pierced through the darkness like a spear. He wore the same crimson armor of the elites except for the helmet and shield as he had none. In his left hand was a double-edged sword of about the length of his arm from the hilt tip to the point of his steel. The hilt was tightly wrapped in red and the guard was in the shape of a black phoenix. Its blade was the lightest shade of pink mixed with the color of steel and glows in a red aura. But what were most amazing about him were the awe-inspiring wings of fire on his back that had a 12-foot wingspan from end to end. He was no ordinary being. As this young redhead gazed upon his summoner, he then spoke with a voice full of authority and tranquility. "I am Suzaku of the 5 elemental gods of the earth. I am the phoenix of passion and love. Who might you be that I might acknowledge for my freedom through this sacrifice?" spoke the red-haired man. The blonde's ears, despite his torn state, grasped every word that this godly man had spoken. As he looked at his surroundings, he then realized what had happened. His pit of despair now rose into flames of anger and regret as they began to fill his heart. His whiskered cheek marks grew deeper and darker. His mouth now had lined in black as his canines grew longer and sharper than ever. As his hair began to spike more radically in expression of his heightened emotions, while his once cerulean eyes now were red and its pupils were slit, this angered beastly form of Naruto emanated a dark malicious desire to kill all that stood in his path. The beast then growled his words at the man, "Uzumaki Naruto. What do you mean by sacrifice? Are you saying that Hinata life was necessary to release you? What do you mean?" Obviously his angered state had lack of rational as he barked the last words. But the stalwart Suzaku remained calm and stared deeper into his eyes. He was reading the pain and emotional struggles that the blonde had suffered. In short, he was reading his life. When he had finished his analysis of him, he then softly spoke to him in order to share the inevitable truth. "I see you have gone through a lot. Love had not touched your heart. As the god over love, I feel your sympathy. Especially since your body contains 2 spirits, O great Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko." How does he know me? The despaired blonde thought to himself. The fiery, red-haired Bishonen's words sliced Naruto's mind in two. Seeing the blonde's staggered state, he then continued to speak. "Your woman became the sacrifice necessary to release me from my 1,000-year prison the moment she had confessed her love for you. My soldiers who were bound with me felt this and made the necessary actions to merge the both of you in this altar. One soul full of love was needed for me to take shape in the form you see now. Behind me is the gateway out of this magically sealed prison. Since I needed only one, you may go and finish your life story ahead." His last 2 sentences were direct and straight to the point. Naruto then started to lose his mind at that because he said it as if he didn't care. God or not, he wanted her back and angrily asked of the god before him, "How can you just say that and expect me to follow? My life was a wreck from the beginning. It was hell living like this every day. Nobody liked me. In fact, a lot of people hated me and always beat me up until an inch of my life whenever they got a chance to, all for the reason that I was the Kyuubi incarnate. Though I had friends who steadily began to like me, I still didn't have someone who would be with me and love me for me no matter what. When I finally found that person, she just died by my own hand. Am I that evil that I didn't deserve love like that at all? Give her back to me now. I need her. He poured his heart out with tears of blood streaming from his face from the stress that he felt at that time. While Naruto was crying in blood, the fiery Bishinen's thoughts were filled with sadness. I had expected this to happen. The poor boy has suffered enough. Unfortunately, fate has its own twisted sense of judgment. The penalty for my release was high enough, but of all people, the mate of the most powerful Jinchuriki on earth. What is Kami up to? While the blonde and the redhead were glaring each other, a soft touch from a hand cupped Naruto's left cheek in efforts to wipe his tears of blood. When Naruto felt this, he left his blazing gaze and looked down on the woman in his arms. All this time she was still breathing. She heard and saw everything that Naruto had done and spoken at this moment. Her eyes had gazed upon his red slit ones. She made a weak smile as she touched his face while blood streamed from her mouth all the way to the blood-filled ditch. She used the last of her strength and uttered her final words of endearment. This is the reason you didn't want to share your secrets to me. I understand now. All those times you were hated, scorned, beaten and tortured, and only you know what else happened. It all makes sense now. But I really care about you, Naruto. It doesn't matter to me if you were the Kyuubi or not. You are you. And I care about you that I would gladly die for you like this. Please don't regret anything anymore. Don't wallow in sadness. It's not like you to always be this sad. Go with Sakura-san. She can love you for you now. I'm just happy that I can see the real you. Because, she said to him as she brought his face closer to hers. Softly and lovingly, she then whispered to his lips, once more, the greatest words that would impact Naruto's life. Aishidara Naruto-kun. With that said, she sealed it with a deep kiss. It was a fragile yet wonderful moment. Her tongue attempted to gain entry, which he permitted, and made the same move as well. Both were battling for dominance, and massaging the tongue of the other for a whole minute as their lips locked. Their hearts beat as one as their feelings reached each other for the first and last time at that moment. Her hands then dropped to the blood-filled floor, now lifeless. She had finally passed on in peace, signified by the smile on her face. Naruto then relieved himself from the kiss of death as he said his feelings towards her lifeless body with tears streaming down his eyes. Aishidara Hinata-chan. He then laid her body down in the blood-filled ditch as he grabbed the tainted sword next to him in a reverse grip and kneeled down in a traditional Japanese fashion, while pointing the blood-tipped steel towards his chest. Suzaku then barked in distress to the saddened Jinchuriki as he leaped into action. Yagero Naruto. Only one was needed. Don't do it or else something bad. Before he could finish his sentence and grab the blonde, Naruto, who was filled with regret and sadness, could not take it anymore and readied himself for the next world as he said before stabbing the sword down his chest. I'm coming, Hinata-chan. The sword then released his two spirits in a wild flash of blue and red. As his blood overflowed the filled engravings on the altar, the engraved symbol for infinity and kanji for love began to glow blue. The engraved overflowing circle glowed in the same color as the blood of both lovers mixed together in perfect harmony. The distortion then filled the altar as a magical circle appeared on the floor and glowed in the same color. The two spirits in Naruto's body then flew into the time and space wormhole, intertwining each other like a rope would as they passed through towards the gleaming light at the end of the astral tunnel. This marked the end of Naruto's life as he had died there. But the moment he passed on, it marked the beginning of a new journey. I, Suzaku, now am to bear witness and account the story of this great man, and his journey in death and his afterlife. Sacrifices are made so something in return can be given. For Hinata's love, I was set free. From Naruto's death, the journey towards love and redemption was reopened for his soul's sacrifice. A bright flash of white light blinded Naruto's eyes before he could come into consciousness. Ugh, my head, so this is what death feels like. His mind, though battered by the psychological stress that accompanied his pilgrimage into the next world, still remained stable as he could now make out his surroundings from his bedside position. His cerulean eyes gazed at what was in front of him. He saw a green straw-built ceiling with wooden frames that separated the interwoven mats into several blocks that lined the entire ceiling. In the center of the ceiling was a traditional Western fan lamp that made a familiar whistling sound as the blades passed by. To his right was a small table with 6 mats around it, and a small dresser at the corner with a vase full of a familiar blooming flower. Not what I expected. Death sure is traditional. As he looked to his left, he saw a pond in the middle of a traditional Japanese garden and a man staring at the sky with his back turned to him. The blonde's gaze gained focus as he concentrated on the figure in the classical beauty of the garden. He had gray hair standing up in 2 directions. His haori was pure white as the clouds he gazed upon in bliss, with a rhombus lined in black with the kanji of 5 in its center. The only thing familiar with his attire that could be seen were his shinobi sandals and bandaged legs that held his black hakama from hiding his lower legs as a slight breeze picked up and blew his coat. The man now could feel his now conscious guest of honor gaze upon his backside, telling him that he was up and ready to talk to him. With a big sigh, he then spoke to the blonde. The gardens here are much better and cleaner than in Konoha. It's a shame, Naruto, that we could only breathe this air here than at the top of the highest peak of the Konoha monument, or see such a beautiful garden than the ones growing at the back of the Hokage Tower. This statement sparked in the blonde's mind a nostalgic image. Somehow this man knew him from a previous life, yet though vaguely familiar, he still could not pinpoint who it was. Who is he? He knows my name. He must be someone who died and had lived in Konoha during my lifetime. Wait. Then that could mean he's. The blonde's thoughts were as sharp as ever, even in death. As he stood up and walked behind him, he then took a deep breath to refresh his lungs with the clear, crisp air in this new dimension. With a feeling of freshness, he then spoke to the now recognizable man. It sure is as Sarutobi Aji-san. His remark had touched the heart of the kind old man who was once the Sandaime of Konoha as he turned his wrinkled face to meet his with a sad smile. It was obvious that he had hoped he didn't see his favorite loud-mouthed, hyperactive and ambitious genin come to this world at such a young age. As the aging wise old sage and young blonde sat down in front of the pond, they began to chat about their surroundings and reminisce on their past lives like it was a regular day in Konoha when Naruto wasn't doing any pranks or training. Eventually, the conversation drifted towards how they both entered into this new and exciting realm. Aji-san, I get the idea how you got here because you died fighting Orochimaru. But I want to know how I got here and why you're wearing those clothes. Naruto had much to learn and didn't hesitate as he asked the wise, old man for him obtain answers that could or would blow his mind. As the former Sandaime closed his eyes, he then told the puzzled blonde everything that had happened to him. Flashback. The intertwined spirits had merged into one as they exited the tunnel into the next life. At the gaping void of the wormhole formed in the dimension of the afterlife, a flash of light beamed right through the dimensional barrier of the heavily fortified walls of the city encased in it. The Jinchuriki's entry, however, did not go unnoticed. Just as he entered into the next life through the dimensional void, in an enclosed room filled with electronic equipment and several computers and monitors, a beeping sound could be heard as the normally dormant system locomotioned into overdrive. Someone has entered the dimensional barrier, the brown-haired girl said as she looked into the primary monitor indicating their position. What? How did that happen? Is this Aizen's counteroffensive already? Asked a fatter one as he got up from his chair and looked into the monitor. No. The Ryatsu signature is strong, but it's far too raw to be a hollow or Shinigami, the brown-haired girl replied as she estimated the composition Ryatsu from her computer. Exactly how raw and how powerful? Asked another as he awaited the brown-haired girl's answer. She quickly ran through some tests as she typed away. Her investigation proved some incredible results as she said, "No way! It's 100% raw and currently almost as powerful as the Sotecho." The nearest one to the screen then barked without hesitation. "Alert all divisions to prepare for battle now." Without a moment's notice, every division began to ring their alarm bells to warn the inhabitants of the impending danger. The inhabitants below began to panic as they each hurried into defensive maneuvers to protect themselves from whatever alien that would come to wreak havoc and pain upon them. While outside they were poised for battle, one hurried inside a narrow hallway and stopped at the open entryway as he bended on one knee and reported to the man in the office in front of him. "Sotecho Yamamoto Genryusai. A powerful Ryoka has effortlessly broken through the barrier of Suriidai and has landed in the execution chamber." The blue-haired man's report caused the aging yet firm old man to rise from his seat as his beard hung reaching his chest. The old man picked up his wooden cane at his left side and immediately lifted his right hand to the kneeling man in front of him, and with eagle eyes barked at him. "Send for all the Godai 13 captains to meet me at the site at once to capture him." The blue-haired man bowed his head in resignation as he replied, "Hate, Sotecho." With the curt reply of the kneeling man to the commander, he then vanished in a blur, and did as he was commanded. On top of the barren and dead hill where the unconscious body of the blonde lay, several figures in white hyoris with a black-lined rhombus, and the kanji of numbers from 1 to 13 on their backs respectively, cautiously approached the seemingly lifeless body of the young blonde as a breeze swept by and brushed the dust of the wasted cliff and the blonde locks of hair on the sleeping adolescent. "So one human got through the barrier. This should be exciting," one of the figures said. The woman next to him, however, just rolled her eyes and sighed. One of the figures that approached the unconscious blonde, however, recognized the boy and the several red tails underneath him as he instinctively went over to the body and carried him in his arms. "No one touches him!" he shouted at the rest of his colleagues with his cerulean eyes piercing a cold stare of concern and intimidation as the breeze lightly swept his long blonde locks of hair towards the right. All except Sarutobi and Yamamoto Genryusai took a step back in fear of this man. They could tell that his eyes just said, "Leave us alone or die." The commander stared hard at the man before drifting his gaze to the young blonde in his arms. His eyes grew wider as he saw a patch of red fur being clumsily hidden by the man carrying the lad. It was then that he immediately knew what the connection between the boy and his newly appointed captain of the 3rd Division was. Armed with this knowledge, he then spoke to his subordinates. "Very well then. All of you return to your posts except for the 3rd and 5th Division commanders. I will have a word with these two in my office." They all bowed in agreement as they returned to their posts to restabilize their environment except for the 4 sentients that entered the commander's office to speak further concerning this scandalous event. Sarutobi sat in one chair opposite to the seat of the commanding officer in his paperwork-filled desk and the larger version of the rhombus at the wall with the kanji for 1 in it. In his mind, he understood what it felt to be seated in front of the Hokage like this. It was quite ironic. To his companion on his left, though, It was the worst of times as the man cradled the young blonde in his arms. The commander gave no room for hesitation as he calmly interrogated his newly appointed captains. Judging by your reactions a while ago, I can tell he is someone of importance from your past lives. May I inquire as to who he is so we can straighten this matter up? The two captains looked at each other with fright, knowing that their commander was not a very tolerant man. He was known for his unreal strength but never his mercy. They sharpened their gaze and nodded at each other before turning to their chief of staff while swallowing hard to tell him the truth without regard to the utter consequences. Sarutobi then cleared his throat as he spoke. The truth is, the older blonde didn't hesitate as he cut off Sarutobi's words when he spoke in his place. So Teicho, he is my son, Namikaze Naruto. I sealed the soul of the Kyuubi no Yoko into his body so that it could no longer tear down the homes of my people in Konohagakure no Soto. He is the reason that Kushina and I am here in Soul Society in the first place. I expected to see him here in my old age at the least, but I see him here now in his youth, the blonde-haired man said while tears streamed down his face as he filled in for Sarutobi. It was better if he explained it as it was his son that he cradled. After all, he is family, the commander would understand, right? The commander slumped in his chair, allowing the sun from the right side of the room to shine on his cross-scarred bald head as he buried his brow in thought. After what seemed like eternity, the commander then ordered the two captains, very well then. If he is your son, then he may stay in your house. But I wish to speak to you as well and the boy when he wakes up and is ready to speak. So don't be late, Namikaze Minato. The blonde-haired man then rose his gaze from a downward state into a smile of joy at the wonderful news. Sarutobi also felt this sudden burst of joy since he spent most of the boy's childhood taking care of him and watching him grow like he was his own grandson. Before they let their swirl of elation get to them, they respectfully bowed and left. When they had left the spacious office, the commander then made a weak smile as he said to himself, "Ah, how good it is to be young," but he didn't have to hide the other one with him. When the two captains had finally reached the 3rd Division's post, they were promptly greeted with a bow of respect by the lieutenant of Namikaze Minato, as they entered the bedroom overlooking the garden and lay Naruto down in the prepared futon by Minato's Fukuteicho. As they looked in endearment of the boy, the subordinate then asked his superior, "Is there anything else that I can do for you, Taicho?" The blonde-haired lieutenant asked. His hair covered half of his left face and was shoulder-length that wore a black hakama and kimono with a white armband carrying the division symbol for 3 and a sheathed katana in his left side of his waist. "No, thank you, Azuru. That will be all. Sarutobi, my friend, please watch him while I go look for Kushina to tell her of the news." Both men nodded as the blonde-haired man blurred away. End of flashback. Back in real time, Naruto's eyes grew wide like saucers at the startling revelation. He never expected that the yandere was the one who trapped the Kyuubi in him and furthermore, his biological father. In fact, to add to that bit of information, the culture shock that surrounded him began to burn our hero's young mind. Naruto then turned to face the old man and stuttered to the old man beside him, "Owaji-san, I." Sarutobi then held Naruto down as he attempted to stop him from panicking as he said to him with all seriousness, "Calm yourself, Naruto. Take it easy. Take several deep breaths so we can straighten things up. I know how you feel since everything is so sudden, but you just recovered from what I believe was a painful entry into this world." Seeing Sarutobi's compassion for him, he then did as he was told. His heartbeat finally slowed down. His mind began to cool off as he closed his eyes to soften the storm in his head. "Thank you, Aji-san. I really needed that." "No problem, Naruto," the wise old warrior said as he smiled. As they sat down in the glimmering garden, fleeting footsteps could be heard getting closer and louder as it passed by until they heard the sudden swing of the sliding door open wide to reveal a beautiful woman panting with a shade of red on her face. The two former shinobi turned their heads to see the alarmed woman at the door. Naruto was shocked at seeing this beauty that had barged in unannounced, while Sarutobi just looked with a smile of content. The beautiful white-skinned lady looked to be in her mid-20s and was slightly taller than Naruto. She had deep-seated purple eyes that complemented her crimson-colored hair tied neatly in a bun at the back and fastened securely with 2 silver chopsticks so the ends of the hair would stand up a little, while her front bangs were parted slightly to curve her cheek and 2 locks hung behind her ears at shoulder length. She wore a slightly loose sleeveless shahakusho to show her ample bust size, and the hakama had openings in the side that ran from her waist towards the middle of her upper thighs to reveal the skin on her legs. Her lower legs were tied with bandages in the same fashion as Sarutobi, with a matching pair of shinobi sandals and a black choker on her neck. She had a wakizashi tied at her back. Its hilt was wrapped in orange cloth while its guard was the normal square type and its sheath black. The stunning beauty then fixed her gaze on the young blonde in front of her. Her eyes began to water as she ran to him screaming his name. When she got into arm's length of him, she jumped and grabbed him. Coincidentally, they both fell into the pond. As she squeezed the life out of him, she then joyfully kept on saying, "Naruto! My Naruto! My baby boy! I've missed you so much!" As she snuggled into his blonde locks of hair, Sarutobi began to pry him out of her clutches in order to save what was left of the suffocating boy. When the former sandaime finally released the blonde from his awkward prison, the young blonde then blushed with his jaw open and pointed his finger at the red-haired woman as he stuttered. "Who are you?" said Naruto as he climbed out of the pond, sitting on the now soaking grass. The red-haired woman realized that he could not recognize her at all, seeing as he has never met her before. She then crept out of the pond, soaking wet with her hair undone, and told him with all her emotions let loose as she hugged him with his face half buried in her bosom. Naruto, I am your mother Uzumaki Kushina all this time while I was here waiting for you to come one day so we can be reunited as one family after the Kyuubi seal finally came to an end. I really missed you. I only got to see your face once before they sent you to the sealing chamber. After that I just waited here in death. His ears could not believe him. Yet somehow, as he felt the softness of her chest, he could feel no lust or romantic feelings towards this fully blossomed flower. He could feel it in him. That parental love that he longed for so long. And that gut feeling that she was definitely telling the truth. The young blonde was like a helpless lamb as he cried and quickly hugged her tightly. He felt her warm embrace filled his empty soul as he cried and cried and cried. Sarutobi just stood there looking at them with a smile as he put his haori around them to prevent them from catching a cold due to their sudden outbreaks of emotion. Nostalgia came upon him as he said, "A happy reunion in death. Karma sure is ironic." While the mother and son sat there, soaking wet, beside the pond, a tall man in the slightly similar outfit as Sarutobi walked in towards the light of the sun. He had long, spiky blonde hair and the same cerulean eyes as Naruto. In fact, the resemblance between them is too obvious to deny. He wore a sleeveless version of the haori with the black lined rhombus on its back with the kanji for 3 written on it. He wore the traditional black kimono and hakama except the top was left to hang over his obi, which revealed his tight long-sleeved black undershirt. His lower attire was the same as Sarutobi's except he had 3 kunai pouches strapped with a white sash on both legs to contrast the color of the shahakusho, and the katana attached to his back with a blue sash, and the Konoha symbol engraved on the hilt. The blonde-haired man then stopped just at the wooden flooring that went around the edges of the post, and grinned as he said to them, "Yar yar. Starting the family reunion without Mia?" Naruto then recognized the man as they turned to look at him in response to his question. The light feelings of happiness and bliss suddenly died as soon as it came up when he saw the man who put him through so much pain for all his life. He knew that he meant well, but his saddened heart did not as his eyes turned into the dreaded scarlet slit ones while at the same time, his fangs and claws grew. His whisker birthmarks became deeper and wider as his blonde hair became more feral with rage. Sarutobi became very alarmed as he knew what was going on. But before he could act, Naruto ran with a feral speed as he attempted to wound the man in front of him. Kushina could only watch in fright as her son assaulted her husband. But before Naruto could reach his father's throat, a lash from a red blur sent him flying into the pond once more. They were all shocked at what just happened. The former yandame just sighed as he nearly died from the hands of his own son. He then said to the red figure in front of him, "I'd never expect that you would come rescue me from my own son. The world sure is ironic." Kyuubi. Naruto stood up from the pond and gasped with his mother and Sarutobi as they saw a wolf-sized form of the Kyuubi no Yoko in front the now thankful Minato. He was poised and ready to strike all that would attempt to hurt the man behind him. With his 9 tails swaying, he then barked at Naruto. "Baka! What were you thinking? After all these years saying how the yandame was a great shinobi and how you wanted to surpass him and make his dream come true, you thank him by attacking him? He's your father, Gaki. Even I wouldn't do something so low and you would? How dare you, you filthy bag of flesh!" His words, though full of authority, did not cause Naruto's heart to yield. Naruto retaliated to his question of wisdom with his own answer of folly. "Shut up. He sealed you in me. Because of him, I lived every single day for the past 12 years of my life being beaten to an inch of my life, neglected, hated, constantly being assassinated, made fun of in general, the list goes on. Baka! I was the reason for your miserable life, not him. By acting the way you do now makes you no different from the people who abused you, Gaki. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up." The condensed feelings in the young blonde's heart could be felt by all in that room as he cried those words. It was a cry of sadness and despair. Sensing his son's deep pain, Minato then knelt in front of his son as he pleaded, "Naruto, I can't understand what you feel from your past life." "Of course you can't. You weren't there," the feral Naruto said as he spat those words with disgust. "But from what I heard from Sarutobi, I can only say I'm sorry for everything that has happened to you. I did what I could because I loved the village and I loved you even more. It was painful for me as well to commit such a sacrifice even though I knew the consequences. I prepared myself for this day if ever it would happen." "What?" Naruto muttered in confusion. Before the former yandame continued his apology, he then unsheathed his sword. Everyone else tensed as they saw the ready blade. The blonde man then laid his sword on the ground in front of Naruto, and bowed his head as he then made his final plea. "Naruto, if it makes you happy, take my life as vengeance in exchange for the people who hated you and caused you much suffering. I will be the vessel that represents all those villagers and people who have hurt you in the past." A shocked Kushina was about to run to them but was held back by the hand of Sarutobi on her left shoulder. "Let me go, Aji-san," screamed the frightened mother. Sarutobi's grip, however, stood firm. Sarutobi could only sigh as he looked at the two blondes while paying no attention to the worried Kushina's provocation as she struggled from his grasp. Naruto had the sword ready to decapitate his father. Kyuubi could only watch his son was about to slay father. "Gaki, don't do this. Don't make the same mistake as that Uchiha did, the poised Kyuubi thought as his fiery gaze fell upon his angry vessel. Only silence could be heard in the background as the young blonde's grip on the gleaming blade tightened. It was a deafening silence until Naruto cried, "Kyuuso!" He cursed as he threw the sword into the ground. He then slumped by the wall, crying his heart out with his father embracing him in his loving arms. The dying heart of the young blonde was now filled with the love and care of his family except for Kyuubi as he slept by the dinner table in the middle of the room. "It's okay, son. Just let it all out," said the older blonde as he hugged him in his arms. Kushina soon followed as she broke from Sarutobi and hugged them both with tears in her eyes as she sobbed. Sarutobi on the other hand wiped the sweat and tears from his eyes as he sat beside the weeping family. By the time Naruto was fine enough to talk, they all then moved to the dinner table to eat. This of course surprised the young blonde as he had predetermined in his mind that people don't eat at all after they die. Then again, a lot of things had to be cleared up as he was in a strange new world. His mother just chuckled at his innocent look towards the feast laid out for them. In fact, he gasped and dropped his jaw as he saw the monstrous appetite of his mother, as she voraciously consumed the food in front of them. Sarutobi just sweat dropped as he spoke out loud. "I still can't get used to her appetite. How you're able to live with such a woman is beyond me. It takes patience and practice," the blonde man said as he smiled and scratched his head before slurping up the last bit of ramen in his bowl. It was understandable now to the young blonde where he got his love for ramen and his voracious appetite as his mother burped at the last bowl before she lied down in an obvious "I'm full" gesture. What surprised him with her action was that she didn't gain an inch in her belly. Naruto's sweat dropped as he thought, "Where does it all go? Even I got no clue how that happens to me. Must run in the family." As they laughed at Kushina's burned-out state, Naruto finally noticed that Kyuubi was not sealed in him. And so he curiously asked the red-maned fox, "Why are you here? Aren't you supposed to be sealed in me?" To the rest in that room, they too thought about it. It was a very good question. To the Kyuubi, however, it was idiotic. The now annoyed fox bit his pride as he answered the boy's question. "That was a good question for an imbecile. The reason I'm here is because I'm dead. Another reason was because of the Shiki Fujin that your father over there used. It bonded our spirits for life. In other words, though I hate to admit it, you're the master, and I'm the loyal servant," the Kyuubi answered in disgust as he spat the last sentence. Naruto just sat there with his arms crossed and deep in thought. This made everyone else sweat drop as their unison thought was, he can't be seriously trying to ponder that. After a full minute, an evil grin formed on the boy's face. So now he gets it was the thought in everyone else's mind in that room. Naruto then looked at the Kyuubi and immediately commanded, "Sit." After he said his command, a black seal that suddenly revealed itself on the Kyuubi's neck began to glow yellow. Before they could be surprised at the sudden entrance of the seal, the Kyuubi's body began to gain weight as if gravity was pulling him down. The fox's knees soon gave way as it stood prone on the floor. An enraged and humiliated fox began to scream at the boy, "Kyuuso! I'll see you rot in hell for this. Don't you dare treat me, the demon Lord Kyuubi, like this, you insolent GKI." The young blonde just laughed as the Kyuubi made his rants and several profanities at the boy while the rest just looked dumbfounded. They were having the time of their lives, reunited as a family and whole at last. Though they were only united in death, but their lives were now happier in its rebirth. As we look further, the large white-coated room that stood before the two blondes and the Kyuubi accompanying them still had its awe-inspiring effects upon them as they sat with wide-open eyes. For the red-maned fox, however, it was just like meeting Kami for judgment. Flashback. The Fukutecho of Minato had just entered the 3rd Division headquarters. As he slid the door open, he then unemotionally gave his orders to the family by the small dining table. "I'm sorry to interrupt this joyous occasion, but the commander has requested you and your son's presence, Taicho," said the blonde-haired lieutenant as he entered the room of the Namake's family where they, along with Sarutobi and Kyuubi, were eating together. It was time to meet their inevitable fate. Naruto then stood up and politely said to the kneeling lieutenant, "Okay. We're going. Arigato." "Excuse me," the blonde lieutenant said as he respectfully bowed and walked away to his further duties. Both blondes knew that it could mean a fate worse than death if the commander wished it when Kushina mentioned of him, during their conversations, banishing Minato to clean the entire Seirei sewer system with a brush because he was late when he had called for him. The blonde man had a pale expression as he remembered that day when he was soaked with all the toxic waste from who knows what for an entire month. Kyuubi just laughed at the pathetic look the once mighty Hokage gave at such memories. As the blonde father and son pair marched in the hallways towards the marble-carved office of the commander, Naruto just stared in awe at the spectacles beyond him. He had never imagined seeing a place larger and more magnificent than Konoha. The afterworld was more than he could ever imagine as the foundations and most of the walls of every building were made of marble. When they finally arrived at the large room where the commander had been patiently waiting, the two blondes sat in the chair just opposite of the large wooden, paper-filled desk expecting the worst just as Kyuubi arrived shortly to accompany them. End of flashback. Back in real time, the commander, from his paper-stacked desk, inspected the two blondes and the animal that had sat beside the younger blonde. Naruto peered over as he saw the stacks of paper that piled up on the wooden desk in front of him. Nostalgia ran through his head as he thought. Even in death there's a ton of paperwork. Now I understand what Aji-san and Ba-chan had to go through. Paperwork is a fate worse than death. They were stiffened in their seats, not knowing what to expect. As the old warrior glanced, he noticed a faint sweat sliding from the teen's cheek down to his neck as it glimmered in the afternoon sun. The two blondes were the only ones that seemed intimidated by his presence and his harsh and serious face. With his face now softening, the wise old commander now finished with his inspection of the trio and spoke to them with a modulated, but weighted voice. Good. You're just in time. Had you come any sooner, I would be pained to send all of you involved in the incident to clean the sewers again. The trio then swallowed hard, knowing he wasn't going to give mercy to anyone no matter who it was. The old warrior then inwardly smirked, knowing that he has their full attention, and continued to question them. So, I've heard that you, Naruto Uzumaki, is the son of my newly appointed 3rd Division captain and a good friend of the newly appointed 5th. Naruto then nodded. I guess there's nothing that escapes him, thought the young blonde as he sighed in defeat. Seeing the young blonde's curt reply, the commander then continued. And I can see that the red ball of fur over there is the staunchest of all the Biju, the Kyuubi no Yoko, who coincidentally was sealed inside you from the Shiki Fujin. Quite the story there, said the commander as he turned his gaze towards the fox during his last. Fox then nodded and began to speak while his 9 tails swayed in the wind. Do you always have to be so formal, old friend? Anyway, since my vessel and I are already dead, I think it would be appropriate to send him to the academy. It's the only way he can live and find out more about Soul Society and the afterlife, as he is already here in Seriidai. Who knows? He might make it to captain level. The two blondes were shocked by this startling revelation. Both then turned their heads towards the fox and screamed, What? You know each other? The two blondes' jaw dropped as saucers replaced their eyes while they stared at the Kyuubi. Yes. Quite well, actually. It was during a time when the spirit world was still closely in touch with the physical one. He was a young Shinigami, while I was a young fox. We go way back than you can ever know. I can tell you more later on, but can we keep focused on the problem at hand? They were both at a loss for words. The commander then interrupted their small talk to answer the Kyuubi's previous question. I see the logic in it. It would be beneficial for the boy and us if he would attend the academy. But he will not be treated special just because he is the son of one of our captains, nor because he is your vessel. We need all the help we can get at this time, and it would be greatly appreciated if he would keep his mouth shut concerning this matter. At least for now, until he graduates. The older blonde crossed his arms and nodded in reply while the younger one scratched his head in confusion. With a foxy grin in his face, he then replied to the old warrior. I've never been good at schoolwork, so I might not do really well, but I will give it my all. The aging commander then made a weak smile and said to them, I'm sure you would do well. I do expect you to do so since my newly appointed captains do favor you and we are in need of good help these days. Speaking of which, Minato, please guide the boy to the Shinigami Academy for his training. It would be my pleasure, the older blonde replied as he bowed in acknowledgement. Naruto, however, still looked puzzled as he muttered, Ano. The wise old commander then looked at the young blonde expecting his question. Ano, where am I to be exact? The wise old commander then began to explain the fascinating new world he was in. You're in Soul Society. Seriidai to be exact, this is the world where the souls of the dead go after they have died. And Seriidai is the place in Soul Society where the Shingamis reside to guide the souls here in the afterlife. Really? I've heard and read of stories of the afterlife and the Shinigami. You don't look like how the pictures illustrated you, said the puzzled blonde. The Sotecho just chuckled as he then explained to the boy of the afterlife. Oh, those pictures. The one you're talking about is the one illustrated concerning the Shiki Fujin. That was the 11th Division Captain Zaraki Kenpachi in disguise. I never would have guessed that there would be a human who would be capable of even creating such a technique. Even worse, making a contract with Kenpachi. What? Shouted the confused Naruto. Obviously the young blonde had much to learn concerning the Shinigami world. Minato sensed this and carefully elaborated to his son. Son, I'm sure you already know what the Shiki Fujin does. It turns out that when you make the contract and summon a Shinigami, you end up summoning one of the Shinigami captains. It also turns out that depending on the order of the hand seals, you end up summoning a Shinigami proportional to the hand seals. In Sarutobi's case, he summoned the most ruthless Shinigami known as Zaraki Kenpachi, while I, on the other hand, ended up summoning him and his cute little Fukutecho, Yachiru, who so happens to have written the seal on your stomach. Naruto swallowed hard before a vein throbbed on his head as he then said, So technically you didn't have to die if the Shinigami you summoned didn't feel like it. Everyone nodded. Naruto just sighed as his sweat dropped and face vaulted to the floor. Kyuso, one of these days I'll find those two and beat the shit out of them. The angry Naruto began to rant that thought over and over again in his head until the sound of the Sotecho's cane tapped the floor. When the wise old commander snatched their attention, he then cleared his throat as he said, Now that everything is settled, I have some paperwork I'd like to finish. The Sotecho made his point clear as he started signing the stacks of paper that piled up on his desk. As the two blondes turned away, Naruto noticed that his constant companion was not walking with them. He then turned his head around and spotted the fox still sitting there. So he then asked of the Kyuubi, Kyuubi, are you going with us or are you going to reminisce here? I think I'll reminisce here. Just call me when you need me, Gaki. Fine, suit yourself. Ja any. With a wave of goodbye, the two blondes then disappeared from sight as they walked towards the direction of the Shinigami Academy. When the two were out of sight, the two old companions still within the office then made a sigh of relief. The old warrior began to lightly grasp his beard as he then asked of his old friend, now that they're gone, can you explain to me the situation? I know very well that there is more than meets the eye here. Especially since the Shiki Fujin has been used 3 times within the past years. And how did you get here in the first place? Normally you should have gone to hell or the judgment seat in Kami's world. Yet here you are. I think it's going to be quite an interesting story. It sure is, the fox replied while he went closer to the desk of his old friend to continue his story. It happened when my vessel and his newly found mate fell into the Phoenix Seal. As you know, the Cinder Phoenix chooses only the purest of hearts with the strongest love for a person as his sacrificial summon. The fox then paused to catch his breath. It was fortunate for him that his friend understood quickly because of their long friendship together. The old warrior now was able to put 2 and 2 together as he continued the fox's story, and his sacrifice happens to be the young woman who loved your vessel very deeply. This is one tragic story, especially since Suzaku assimilated her soul for him to be reborn in our time frame. And if I'm correct, your vessel, and just like clockwork, the Kyuubi continued his sentence for him, killed himself in regret. Unfortunately, he did so with the soul-disrupting weapon of one of the fallen soldiers of the Cinder Phoenix. Naturally, we instantly died because of the property of the weapon. His blood overflowed the sealing chamber and activated the fail-safe mechanism which sent us in this world, though we are still bonded by the Shiki Fujin. How we are still bound despite the weapon's Ryatsu disrupting abilities, I don't know. But I do have a hunch Kami's intervention is involved. The sun no longer shone on the bald commander's cross-scarred head as he rested his chin on his left fist. This revelation now cleared the previous questions but at the same time opened up more. Only Kami knows the adventure laid out for the young blonde. 000. Meanwhile, the two blondes managed to reach the Shinigami Academy. It was like an old Japanese castle except for the stone pillars that held several of the corners of the buildings in place. Naruto just swallowed hard as he began to march alongside his father, as they received strange looks at them and noticed several of the young girls whispering in each other's ears, albeit about them, with blushes on their faces. The students that the young blondes saw were nothing like that of Konoha, as most of which were in the start of their adolescent years. They also wore uniforms. The young men wore blue and white hakamas while the young women wore a red and white one. Both genders, however, shared the white tabi in either Zora's or Getta's as footwear. Understanding his son's still culture-shock state, Minato then spoke to him as they walked towards the principal's office for enrollment. Don't worry too much. You'll get used to it in time. Just give your best. Don't hesitate to ask me any questions if you need help. To be honest, you're actually lucky to go to the academy. Since me and Sarutobi were beyond the age limit, we had to be drafted based on our skills in a 3-week time period. The only thing that ran through the troubled young blonde's mind was how on earth did they pass, as they finally reached the office and entered to be interviewed. Surprisingly, all went well since he was the son of the recent 3rd Division captain. He was quickly enrolled in his first year in the academy. With the interview done, and Naruto managed to pick up his uniform for his first day of class the following day, they walked all the way outside towards the residential district of Seriidia as Minato explained what he could about Soul Society. Naruto listened intently of his father's explanation and learned of the social castes and system of government, as well as life in Soul Society. Though he listened well, somehow this bright new world wasn't so bright to the young blonde's heart as he remembered how he got here and showed a downcast look as his cerulean eyes became a deep void instead of an azure plane. When they finally reached their residence, Naruto just smiled at the beautiful house that stood before him. It was like a small traditional Japanese mansion, complete with a dojo, hot spring, and several rooms along with a clean kitchen and a huge library as well as a storage room where several weapons were kept. They were promptly greeted by Kushina as she glomped all over her now blushing husband. Hey there, boys. How did everything go? Said the feisty redhead as she threw herself all over Minato and gave him a peck on the cheek. Everything went fine. We got him enrolled and the Soteicho has approved of it, the older blonde said as he hugged his wife and kissed her on the lips in return. Naruto just stood there beside them beet red, as he witnessed the two cuddling like a young couple. Her cuddling of her husband, however, ended when a grumble erupted from their stomachs. Though embarrassed by the sudden outburst, they just laughed and sat at the dinner table in the next room where another feast was prepared. Somehow Naruto would take a long time to get used to seeing this. As they sat at the table, they noticed Sarutobi was already there pulling on a piece of chicken with the Kyuubi fighting for it on the other end. It was very childish, but it was something that lightened up their hearts. It's time to eat. Not the time to play tug-of-war. Itadakimasu. After her rant, she began to devour the food like there was no tomorrow. Naruto's sweat dropped at the sight of his dysfunctional family. Even his thoughts could clearly tell his emotions. Oto-san loves eating ramen, Oka-san just loves to eat, and Aji-san and Kyuubi love to eat the same food. No wonder they died early. Note to self, never eat out with all of them together. After some time of vanquishing the foe that was the feast, Minato was still bugged by the depressed look that his son had for some time now. He then curiously asked him, "What's wrong, son? You didn't seem very well a while ago. What's been bothering you?" Naruto finally snapped up in attention to that question as he said, "I'm fine, Ota-san. It's nothing really," he said as he finished his bowl of ramen and started to drink the soup left. While he drank the soup, Kyuubi could not resist being silent anymore and said, "Gaki, don't worry about that one. There are more out there that can be your mate." Naruto comically spewed the soup he was drinking when he heard that statement as a thin coat of pink emerged from his face. Minato just gazed in shock. Sarutobi accidentally choked on his sushi while Kushina miraculously regained consciousness from her burnout state as she sat back up and started shouting, "What? Naruto had a girlfriend. Who is this girl? Do we know her? Is she here in Soul Society?" Naruto panicked and began to plead out loud, "Naruto, I know it's not what you think. We're just good friends." Ignoring the now panicked young blonde, Sarutobi, who managed to swallow the sushi, asked the Kyuubi, "Which one was it? The Haruno or the Hyuga?" The sly fox then answered him, "It was the Hyuga girl. Quite a foxy little one, that one. Shy on the out-east, yet fiery inside. In fact, I confirmed it even more when she started seducing him and confessed to him her feelings for him. I'm proud to say you are my vessel. You've got excellent taste, Gaki." Minato and Kushina rejoiced as they found out the good news while Sarutobi just cried in joy for the boy. Minato then ran over to his son as he got him in a headlock and said, "I'm proud of you, son. You got a girlfriend despite everything." Naruto was the only one who didn't feel elated or resisted his father's grip as he remembered what happened. Instead of showing any emotion at all, he just stood up and went to sleep in his new room overlooking the horizon. The rest except for Kyuubi just stood confused at why he just suddenly left with an aura of sadness. Understanding the dead feelings still emanating in that dining room, Kyuubi then explained to them what had happened between Naruto and his eternally lost lover, and the reason behind their dire situation during their last moments on Earth. The dining room died as a huge weight of sadness poured over their hearts. Kushina began to shed tears as she fully understood how miserable his life was from beginning to end. Not only did he live a horrible life from an incident that he never did, but his efforts were all in vain because love never at any point in his life lived long enough to save his dying soul. Karma's irony was no longer anything funny at this point. How could this have happened? Why did he have to go through such pain by himself? "Why?" the sobbing mother said. It was a painful time for her because of the deep anguish that her son went through. Minato began to curse himself because of his son's suffering. Naruto didn't have a life at all because of a crime he never committed. This was all my fault. If I hadn't, but there wasn't any other way. At the very least I had hoped he had found love. He received the love from Sarutobi and from what I heard, some of his close friends too. But overall, he never experienced true love and the romantic form of it because no one was truly there for him to love him and take good care for him, all because of hatred towards the Kyuubi. All because of misunderstanding, all because of me. My only son died and never resurrected again. "But that's not the sad part, Minato," proclaimed the Sandaime. His words got both of their attention. When they both looked at him still with watery eyes, he then explained his tragic point. "What's really sad was the fact that he killed her with his own hands. All that guilt and regret are flowing through his mind and heart right now," the wise old warrior said with a saddened tone. "But it was an accident. He didn't kill her on purpose," the weeping mother retaliated. Sarutobi, who was saddened by these turn of events, then spoke words that gripped the weeping two's hearts. "No, he did not. But he feels that he did." His statements froze the weeping parents into wide-eyed shock. As both were stunned by this statement, the wise old warrior then continued, "Think about it. He lived all his life blamed for something he never did. Because of that, he had deep sadness and hatred for a reason unknown to him until he found out the truth. But even when he knew they were wrong, no one was there to comfort him through all those hard times. Sadly, I wasn't able to truly be there for him and give him the love and appreciation he needed. That's why he worked hard to earn the people's respect and love because of his pure heart, and he understood that in order to gain respect and be treated with it, he needed to earn it. He was a strong boy and still is. But without love, he lived with a broken heart and a dead soul. He never felt love all his life, but he always gave it even if he himself doesn't understand. Plus, the seal on the Kyuubi was weakening, so he slowly lost control. I see where this is going. He felt that he was slowly becoming a monster, and always felt that a monster like him could never find love or be loved. He tried hard to reject that idea, but all these emotions came crashing down on him when that happened. "Kuso! I hate this," Minato said and smashed his head on the table as he shouted the last part. Such a tragic life was what could be spelled out in the mind and heart of the wise old Sarutobi as he began to light his pipe until he lost the urge to smoke and quit permanently from all the sadness. That room wasn't the only place that loomed of sadness. While the rest mourned for the young blonde downstairs, Naruto himself in his bed shed buckets of tears while grasping tightly on the pillow and lied down in the fetal position as he remembered the painful memories of her death replay in his head, and his thoughts became darker than the sky. "She loved me and I killed her. It was an accident. No, it was my fault. She was the only person who loved me for me, but it could never happen. At least that's what I thought. Maybe I wasn't meant to love. Maybe I'm just like what they say, I am a demon. All those times she was there with me, all those times she comforted me when I needed comfort, all those times she fainted, those times she stuttered, and that time she confessed to me I really do love her. But I guess love never came. I was just too dense, but then again I never deserved it. I really am Konoha's #1 knucklehead ninja. His heart was gripped in a battle of sadness, anger, and love as he remembered all those times with her, and every moment of that fateful day when she died. It was just like the way Sasuke felt to the powerful illusion of the Mangekyo Sharingan as the sorrow kept tormenting him for hours until he finally cried himself to sleep. His tears ended only when dawn woke him. Realizing how early he had woken up, he took a quick bath and quickly changed into his school uniform and took a good look in the mirror before setting off. His gaze no longer showed the damp sight it once had last night as a piercing gaze replaced it with his cerulean eyes now becoming a bright azure flame as he dashed outside towards the highest peak in Seriidii, the execution chamber. When he finally stood there in that barren cliff overlooking Soul Society, a shadowy figure crept up behind him and began to speak. You know, Gaki, you weren't the only one saddened by what happened. When I told them what really happened, they cried and cursed themselves for the tragedy of a life you had, the deep voice said as the figure's 9 tails swayed in the wind. He then stood beside Naruto and continued to speak, seeing that the young blonde still listened. It reminds of the time when I attacked Konoha. Madara Uchiha made a blood sacrifice summoning by using my mate and kits as the blood penalty. How he got a hold of them is beyond me. But when I found out, I let my rage take over and was blinded as I attacked whatever was in my way. I thank your father for what he did, though I still hated being caged. I can relate to what you're feeling at this moment. The feeling of helplessness, rage and regret as you let that image run through your mind. It hurts, doesn't it? Said the Kyuubi as he looked over the horizon. Naruto then closed his eyes as he began to reply to the Kyuubi beside him. It does, and there is nothing I can do about it. What's done is done. The past can't be reversed. But that doesn't mean our future can't. I know that no matter whose fault it was, either way she's gone and I have to accept it and move on so her memory doesn't go in vain. His voice gained a serious tone as he opened his flaming azure eyes just in time to see the sunrise. Both looked onward with sharpened gazes as they felt the other's feelings. Gaki, you were crying yourself to sleep last night. What made you change like this? The now solemn Kyuubi asked. Naruto, with his heart ablaze, replied with determination spewing from his mouth. I never changed. That was until I remembered what she said to me before she died. Flashback. This is the reason you didn't want to share your secrets to me. I understand now. All those times you were hated, scorned, beaten and tortured, and only you know what else happened. It all makes sense now. But I really care about you, Naruto. It doesn't matter to me if you were the Kyuubi or not. You are you. And I care about you that I would gladly die for you like this. Please don't regret anything anymore. Don't wallow in sadness. It's not like you to always be this sad. Go with Sakura-san. She can love you for you now. I'm just happy that I can see the real you. Because, she said to him as she brought his face closer to hers. Softly and lovingly, she then whispered to his lips, once more, the greatest words that would impact Naruto's life. I shit her in Naruto-kun. With that said, she sealed it with a deep kiss. It was a fragile yet wonderful moment. Her tongue attempted to gain entry, which he permitted, and made the same move as well. Both were battling for dominance, and massaging the tongue of the other for a whole minute as their lips locked. Their hearts beat as one as their feelings reached each other for the first and last time at that moment. Her hands then dropped to the blood-filled floor, now lifeless. She had finally passed on in peace, signified by the smile on her face. End of flashback. An aura of silent determination ignited from both the master and the tenant. The young blonde then continued his speech. Her love was what saved me. I was already dead inside. Yet she recklessly loved a person like me. I realized that I loved her too and would gladly die for her, just as she did when she rescued me from myself and gladly died for me. I loved her because she loved me first. Naruto closed his eyes once more, as he stood deep in thought, while replaying the events in his mind once more. The Kyuubi, being soul bound to Naruto, could feel what he felt as he replayed those images. While feeling Naruto's slowly reborn vigor, he then asked him, Gaki, you lost everything. Your entire life was a loss. Tell me, was a lifetime of loss worth it here? The young blonde opened his eyes once more to reveal his flaming azure eyes that glowed even brighter than before. He was truly reborn in spirit from his baptism in blood and tears as his old life was melting away, and he was maturing even more as a bright flame burned inside his heart. With a fierce, but silent determination, he then boldly spoke. Yes, it was. I may have lost everything the moment she and we died, but last night, it was clear to me that what I lost there is nothing compared to what I gained here, a new life that I have the power to change. My destiny is now my own, and I refuse to rot in sadness anymore. Her love freed me from that grave. All my life I have lived in sorrow, but now I will change that and nothing will stop me. The blonde Jinchuriki screamed as the sun flowed over his whisker-marked face and flaming azure eyes. His new life now begun as the sun forged his heart and mind, and they in return forged his resolve. Onward in our journey. The ball of fire that stood in the deep skyline of Soul Society began to radiate brightly, indicating the end of dawn and beginning of morning. During this time of day, many young adolescents paced towards the marble-floored building known as the Shinigami Academy. As several would-be Shinigamis strolled by, a young blonde could be seen sprinting in the distance behind them. Flashback. As the young blonde and his nine-tailed companion entered the small Japanese mansion with the name of Namikaze entitled above the large wooden gate, they were promptly greeted by a red-haired woman who then ushered them towards the dining room, to which they sat down to the feast laid before them. A sweat drop formed on the young blonde's face as he gazed upon the sheer size of the servings on that table. In annoyance, with a vein throbbing on his forehead, he then spoke. Okay, san. Don't you ever eat like a human being? The indulging redhead gobbled down her current bowl before answering her son's annoyed question. Well, someone's in a good mood. Speaking of moods, you'll be in another bad one if you don't eat your breakfast and get to school on time for your first day. Her happy-go-lucky smile and message opened his now beaming heart. The young blonde then realized that he was no longer sad. She's right though, I don't feel sad at all. It's like I've been training with Lee's weights all over my body, and I just released them when I cried myself to sleep that night. His feelings of sadness had melted that night he cried himself to sleep. With that thought in mind, he began to eat happily until his father came in to join them. Naruto, though you are enrolled in the Shinigami Academy, I want you to continue your shinobi training. We'll discuss your training later when you get home from school, said the older blonde as he ate a quick meal and gave a goodbye kiss to his burned-out wife. The younger blonde then quickly nodded and continued to eat until his nine-tailed companion reminded him that he was late. End of flashback. Back in real time, the young blonde dashed as fast as he could towards the shutting wooden gate, and was barely caught by its clutches as he managed to leap past the gates just in time. He panted and made a sigh of relief while he said to himself, Kyuso, next time I'll roast that baka for not reminding me earlier. That's it. I'll put sleeping pills in his next meal so that I can. Before he could continue his ranting, a soft, warm hand had grabbed from behind his right shoulder, effectively cutting his next sentence while a voice spoke to him from behind. I think it would be best for you to save your ranting later and get to class, wouldn't you think? Naruto then turned around to meet the soft-spoken voice that brought him back to reality. The figure was a black-haired woman with brown eyes, and her long locks of hair were braided together in the front that sank until her chest area. She wore the same shihakusho as any other Shinigami except that her haori had the black-lined rhombus with the kanji for 4 at its back, and her robes were tied with an obi sash. The young blonde then blushed at the woman's calm beauty. In a way, she reminded him of his dead lover Hinata. He then scratched his head and politely asked her, Ano, are you a teacher here in the academy? I'm new, so I don't really know where to go around here. The calm beauty chuckled at the polite remarks of the young blonde. She then gave a gentle smile as she answered his question. Yes, I am. Though only part-time, since I do run the 4th division of the Godai 13. My name is Retsu Unohana, by the way. You must be the 3rd son. You're the spitting image of your father, you know, Naruto? The young blonde just smiled and blushed as he nodded. The woman then smiled back and took him to his classroom where he will begin his 6-year training as a Shinigami. As they were about to enter the classroom for the freshman class, Naruto began to show nervousness as a slight sweat dropped from his brow. The kind Retsu noticed this and chuckled as she said, It's going to be fine. I think you'll fit perfectly here. The blonde then took a deep breath and entered the classroom. To his surprise, the seating arrangement was just when he took Chunin exams, albeit much larger. The students just stared in curiosity at the blonde-haired teen with whisker marks on his face and flaming azure eyes. Retsu then stepped in and introduced the young blonde to the students. Class, this here is Naruto Namikaze, son of our newly appointed 3rd Division Captain, Minato Namikaze. I hope you treat him well since he's just new here. The entire class then began to talk among themselves in shock at the realization of the identity of this blonde-haired teen. Aside from the academy hakama that he wore, he also wore a black headband with an engraved symbol of a spiral that shapes into a leaf on a metal plate, and several pouches strapped to both of his legs. Naruto was very embarrassed at this point. But he regained his composure and began to introduce himself. Hi! I am Naruto Namikaze. I like ramen, training, and my family. My dislikes are traitors, death of loved ones, the Akatsuki, and snakes. My hobbies are learning about new things and training. My ambition is to become a better Shinigami than my father. The class instructor and Retsu were amused by his little speech. As Unohana left to attend her other duties, Naruto then found his seat to begin his day. The young blonde was quite interested at the several things that were discussed during his first day. He learned about how Soul Society operates in congruence with the world. He learned about the Hollows, Shinigamis, and Souls. He learned about the several classes in Soul Society and Seriidia, as well as its government, politics, and economic system. There were a lot of things that needed to be covered. Fortunately, they have 6 years to do so. As the day went on, many of the students became bored as the number of topics dragged throughout the day. But our young blonde hero's flaming azure eyes didn't flicker away as he absorbed everything like a sponge. Especially when it came down to the topics of the Shinigami ways of combat such as Kido, Hakuda, Hoho, and Zanjutsu. But those were not to be discussed further within the day as it finally ended, and they were allowed to leave for home. While most of the students went off to head home after a long day of studying, the young blonde instead went towards the library of the academy. It was nothing like the ones back in Konoha, as it stood having 3 floors, 24 feet high and 100 square meters per floor, and the same signature marble flooring, walls, and even stairs that spiraled towards each floor. He gazed at the numerous shelves of knowledge in the entire library. Anyone would get lost in such enormity. Luckily for him, he knew what he was searching for and went over to the receptionist to ask for the location of the information that he hungered to find. As he approached the sitting woman, he noticed that something was amiss with the little lady. She had short brown hair and definite eye bags that lined her pale skin. Though she wore the same clothing as the rest of the Shinigamis, she seemed ordinary at best. The young blonde couldn't help but notice her sleeping form at the desk as a thought of pity entered his mind. Poor thing. Some people here don't get enough sleep. Then again, sleeping seems to be a rare thing here. Better do this quickly so she can rest more. The young blonde then awakened the sleeping girl with a request for the information he needed. Excuse me, hate. I'll be right there. Sotai, who are you? The now awakened maiden asked in a mixture of reflexive action and subtle realization. Naruto's sweat dropped at the antics of the lady before him. Not wasting any more time before the girl could fall asleep once more, he drove straight to the point. I need information on the history of the elemental gods, the relationship between the living and the dead, info on Kido, Hoho, Hakuda, Zanjutsu, info on Ryatsu, and info on hollows and the 3 planes of reality. The disturbed girl then quickly searched the files in her desk drawer and gave him the necessary location as she fell back in slumber. The blonde just nodded and quickly went to his task. The books he had come upon were more than he could expect. The sheer weight alone of every book became a burden to his arms as he carried them into a secluded area in the library. He then ranted to himself in regret of his actions. Kyuso, I knew I'd be carrying a lot, but not this much. Note to self, bring some scrolls whenever visiting the library. Each book that he brought with him contained general to specific knowledge of the 4 combat arts of Shinigamis, the function of Shinigamis in the world, the difference between a soul and a body, the energy of the body and soul, as well as advanced information concerning the Zanpakuto and the other realms, not to mention the origins of Suzaku and anything related to him. 4 hours he sat there and absorbed information and wrote on a small black notebook similar in size to the bingo book of the shinobis. Those things he couldn't readily absorb. Those he could absorb were the basics and intermediate subjects of the academy, while the advanced and deeper understanding of those topics as well as other information from the living world were written in his black book and encrypted into a seal in the form of an archaic language that Jiraiya taught him so that only he or those who understand the language it was written in can decipher what was sealed in the book. Flashback. Naruto was practicing in a nearby lake his chakra control as he stood on water. Jiraiya, on the other hand, was busy writing in his little notebook while giggling pervertedly every so often. Stupid Erosenin writing for his perverted books. What is it that he keeps writing that he needs to leave me to train by myself? I have to find out, thought the young blonde with his curiosity fueling his determination. As night finally fell, Jiraiya fell asleep by the campfire. Hee. That packet of powdered sleeping mushroom that I'd borrowed from Bachan really did knock him out like a light. Now's my chance, thought the young blonde as grinned from ear to ear. As he slinked his hand into the pocket of the sleeping toad sage, he nimbly took the little book and withered back into his tent. The deviant blonde began to joyfully speak in success for retrieving the hated notebook. Yosha! Now I can find out what takes up his time. As the young blonde looked through the notebook, his eyes could not believe what he was seeing. Instead of lines of perverted writing or pornographic diagrams, it was line per line of archaic writing that filled the pages of this small notebook. I think I got the wrong book. He must have switched it before he ate the corn stew, the young blonde said to himself as he scratched his head in confusion. However, he didn't notice the shadow that loomed over him until it spoke. Nope, you got the right book. Naruto turned his head around to see Jiraiya unaffected by his little prank. I knew about the sleeping powder that you stole from Tsunade's desk when we visited the hospital. I used to do that too when we were younger and set up several traps during the Chunin exams when we used it. Jiraiya lived up to his name as a legendary Sannin, alright. Such simple ploys couldn't work on him when he himself had done the same techniques during his time. Seeing that he had nowhere to slide from, Naruto just asked out straight his question. Erosenin, what's up with your calligraphy? I've never seen writing like this before. I never knew you know other languages, let alone how to write them. Jiraiya sat beside the blonde as he explained what those writings were. That's because they are seals and not necessarily writings. This stunned the young blonde as he looked at the several pages of the writings that were listed down on the notebook. Seeing the blonde's dumbfounded state, he then continued his explanation. Those are forbidden sealing techniques that only a selected few shinobi know of. According to ancient legends, it was the sealing technique of the gods. Anything from information to items can be stored using that sealing technique, and there are no limits to how many objects you can seal. What's even cooler about it is that only the user has the power to release the seal, let alone read it, unless there is another user of the sealing technique. But even then it would be hard to unseal it because of the specific energy signature needed to break the seal. End of flashback. The young blonde began to put up his foxy smile when he remembered the day he learned about the forbidden sealing technique passed down to him by his former master during his lifetime on Earth. Thanks for teaching me this, Erosenin. It's pretty handy. He continued his toiling research until dusk settled in. Feeling the fatigue weigh him down, he then left the library and strolled on home in the dimming alleyway of Jiraiya. He was tired, but content with his first day as he happily sat down at the dinner table and ate his fill. The family, including the Kyuubi, began to ask about his day. For the most part, they were shocked at the sheer amount of knowledge he relayed to them after his first day in the academy. Even the yandere couldn't do that in such a short period of time when he did a crash course of becoming a Shinigami. His father was impressed, and now realized that his son would soon surpass him. With this in mind, the older blonde, now brimming with confidence, told his son, "Naruto, I want you to train with me starting tomorrow so that we can improve your shinobi skills and so that Kyuubi can explain to you the situation." The young blonde thought for a minute and then nodded as he finished his fill and went immediately to sleep in his room. He couldn't wait to learn from his father. But what pondered his mind was what he meant by Kyuubi explaining the situation. He could only find out the next day. It wasn't long before dawn came again to wake the sleeping blonde. But this time he was greeted by an all too familiar purr, as he could see 9 red tails swaying in his face. "Gaki, time to start your training. I'll see you in the training yard." The ever-impatient Kyuubi growled as he shunsigned in a burst of flames. Naruto then quickly put on his uniform and went to the training yard in the back of his house. It was a huge field of grass that stretched for several miles. As Naruto stood there in the ocean of grass, he could spot his father, Sarutobi, and Kyuubi in the center. He then approached them and sat down to where they sat as they discussed to Naruto what was going on. "Gaki, as you know, we were sent here because of the little stunt you pulled there in the Seal of the Phoenix." The young blonde sighed as remembered, but then nodded and he continued the Kyuubi's sentence. "I understand. It was the first thing that I looked through in the library here. Suzaku was one of the 5 elemental gods that fought in the Battle of the Elements. Each one of those gods who represented a certain element fought in a battle royal for ultimate supremacy until Kami personally stopped their reckless destruction and sealed them in several locations across the continent where they are chained by their own inner darkness, and can only be released by a sacrifice that fits their internal need." The rest of the group looked at each other. Since he's been doing his research, it makes it easier for them to explain to him the finer details. Kyuubi then spoke to him again as they faced him in attention. "You've done your homework. The sacrifice itself is irreversible once done, so there's no hope of saving her," the Kyuubi said as he jumped towards the awaited conclusion. The young blonde sighed again as he remembered reading that as well in the book where he found the information on Suzaku. Still brimming with determination, he then humbly said, "It's alright. I read that as well, so I know it can't be done. But why didn't Kami destroy them instead?" The fiery Kitsune then explained further to Naruto what has been pondering on his mind. "The 5 elemental gods were not destroyed because it would wreck the very balance in the nature of your world. But that doesn't mean it is very balanced. The Shinigamis didn't bother to look into it because it was a situation beyond their jurisdiction and posed no threat to either worlds since the seal was very strong. I already asked permission to keep the spot for 9th Division Captain open for you so that you can personally fix the situation in your world. Ever since that incident happened, the overall seal weakened to a point where we need to act fast and stop the reawakening of the other 4 gods." Naruto understood from his companion's words that he still had a purpose back in his world. Though, not in the way he imagined. Irony in the very sense was his situation. Sarutobi then asked of the Kyuubi, "We're training him for this reason? But I heard it was the battle of the 4 guardians of the continent. How come you said it was 5? The Kyuubi then answered his question as he closed his eyes in deep thought of the situation. "It was 5 because the god of lightning initiated the first strike. He prided himself more than anything. This angered Genbu of earth, which in turn caused Sarayu of water, Suzaku of fire, and Byako of air to join in as well. From the human's point of view, only 4 were seen battling because the god of lightning was busy trying to get into Kami's realm while the other elements fought in despair against each other until the god of lightning failed and fell right in the middle of the fray just before Kami stepped in. From the Shinigami's point of view, only 1 was the ringleader while the rest were pawns. Which brings me to my next explanation. While Suzaku was released, he did not attempt to escape his prison. I know this because he hasn't destroyed anything in your world at the moment, or come into this realm. This means that he learned his lesson in love. But his release means the god of lightning's seal is now weaker and will continue to weaken regardless. So we need the help of the other 4 gods to defeat the god of lightning." Naruto and Sarutobi looked deep in thought. It was a heavy burden that one man cannot carry alone. Minato took this opportunity to speak to them. "There are many things to ponder right now, but what's important is if you are willing to take this burden. No one else can handle this pressure. Not even the commander. You alone have the power to stop this. The seal by magical standards has its own time frame separate from ours and is beyond our capabilities alone. Are you willing to go through with this, Naruto?" Naruto then shone his flaming azure eyes towards the cerulean eyes of his father and said, "I'll do it." With his agreement, the task was set in place. Feeling the determination of his vessel, the fiery Kitsune then ended the discussion with his final statements. "It's settled then. Gaki, your father and I will train you in taijutsu and ninjutsu before you head out to class. And after class you will train with your mother in chakra control and genjutsu. By the time the day ends, you would have only 4 hours to yourself. Eventually we would train you in the finer arts of being a Shinigami once you need to train. But what about Aji-san? Asked the blonde as he looked at the former Sandaime with a puzzled glare. The wise old warrior then spoke to the concerned blonde the reason why as he bowed his head in defeat. Unfortunately, I have a lot of paperwork to accomplish. Plus, my duties as a Shinigami captain come first. As much as I'd like to help, the last captain in my division left 3 months' worth of unfinished business when he defected. Since Naruto was still unaware of the current affairs of Soul Society, he then asked what any puzzled man would ask in his position. Defected? There was a defection. The older blonde saw the confusion in his son's face and began to explain the current situation. There was a defection just 2 months ago before you arrived. 3 Shinigami captains established an elaborate coup d'etat to obtain the Hogyoku and joined the Hollow Side in order to obtain more power and rule Kami's realm. I and Sarutobi were promoted to those ranks after the defection. I took the 3rd while Sarutobi took the 5th. That leaves you with the 9th division if you make it in time. The young blonde just nodded as he got every explanation down about his training and lifelong mission. From early morning before the start of school, he would train with his father in Kyuubi in taijutsu and ninjutsu, and after class, he would train in chakra control and genjutsu with his mother. This left him just 4 hours of extra time to himself which he would use to research and study before dinner time and sleep. That was the schedule given to him. Just as they were to start the young blonde's training, a young woman with brown hair in a bun and the sash with the kanji for 5 strapped on her left arm over her shihakusho came running in. She panted just before regaining composure and spoke towards Sarutobi. Taicho! Where were you? I've been looking all over until Toshiro Taicho said he saw you go to the Namikaze house. You have a lot of paperwork to sign. This brought anime tears to the former Sandaime's eyes, while the other 3 just sweat dropped. Yup, I was right. Paperwork is a fate worse than death. The young blonde thought up as he confirmed his past thoughts concerning the dreaded paperwork. Just before the old sage was about to leave, he then introduced his lieutenant to Naruto and his father. Naruto, this is Hinamori Momo. She is my lieutenant and vice captain. Hinamori, this is my good friend Minato and his son Naruto. And the 9-tailed friend over there is the Kyuubi no Yoko. The worried young lady then blushed as she spotted the handsome young blonde and promptly bowed as she greeted them good morning before her and Sarutobi went off towards his dreaded duty that he could never escape even in death paperwork. With his bit of goodbye, Naruto spent the rest of his early morning training with his father and Kyuubi. So, what do I train in first, Ota-san? Said the excited young blonde. First of all, we need to make you the fastest Shinigami around. Take off your clothes so I can put gravity seals on you. Naruto then complied. It wasn't the first time that he had a gravity seal placed on him ever since his 2.5-year training with Jiraiya. When the boy finally undressed until his boxers were left, Minato began to write the seal all over his body. The tattooed seals formed several rings around the young blonde's body from head to toe. When he finished writing the seal, he then wrote a secondary one just above the gravity seals. Curious about the secondary seal, the young blonde then asked, "What are the second ones?" "These are restoration seals. Your body will get stronger because of the gravity seals, but the sheer stress of it would cut down the gain from the training to about 80%. This seal will restore your stamina faster and slow down the aging process, allowing your body to receive the full benefit of your gravity seal training and allowing your mind to think and learn much faster." The blonde nodded in acknowledgement as his father finished the seals. The older blonde then flashed his hands through several hand signs. Fast enough for him to complete in time, but slow enough for Naruto to remember. As the older blonde finished the last seal, the watchful Kyuubi then smirked as he saw the young blonde form a crater in his shape from the sheer weight of the seal that totaled 3 tons, which engulfed his body. The young blonde began to cry anime tears from their sheer weight, but had enough endurance to curse in several profanities to his chuckling father. "Sorry for the excess weight. I'll cut it down to 1 ton so you can at least move." "You better. Kyuso. How do you expect me to train if can't move, dumbass?" The annoyed and angry blonde shouted as he attempted to raise the finger at them only to have it fall down on the newly upturned dirt once more. The older blonde and Kyuubi rolled on the floor in laughter as Naruto struggled to get up and release his frustration on his 2 mentors. It would be a long and grueling training for the next 6 years of his life. 2 years have passed as our young blonde began to get accustomed to life in Soul Society. And it so happened that our flaming azure-eyed hero at this time was leaning against the wall in boredom, while his classmates practiced their Kido on a stuffed human-sized target several meters away. Naruto had become an adept prodigy beyond his years, all thanks to his family's training and his determined will. He had fully mastered every lesson that he learned during these past 2 years. He was like a sponge. He absorbed every lesson that was thrown at him that it began to annoy some of his teachers and gain him a popularity among his peers. Though it did not affect him in any way, he was surprised at how much of a reversal his life had become in this world. Back in Konoha, he was the dobe of his batch who was scorned and hated, yet the reverse has become true here in death as a Shinigami. While the rest of his peers were giving their best to do the instructed Bakudo, namely Bakudo number 4, he just leaned at the side because he had already mastered that move ages ago. This, however, didn't please his instructor, as the grumpy man reprimanded the young blonde to stop slacking off and perform the move. "Naruto! What do you think you're doing there slacking off, Bakero? Get your blonde ass over here and perform the Bakuto like everyone else. Naruto yawned as he got away from the wall and poised into a sluggish position facing his target as he aimed, right palm outstretched, at the human-sized bean bag and performed the move. Bakuto number 4, Heinawa. It was a shortened incantation of the move he shouted and performed as the rope of energy shot from his hand and squeezed the life out of its target. Though it didn't have the full power of a fully performed one, it was much stronger than that of his peers. His classmates were shocked at his sluggish yet more effective performance than their best efforts put together. Naruto's instructor, however, wasn't pleased as it was a half-baked move. He then spoke to the blonde with an evil grin on his face. Nice work. But you still have to perform the move 29 more times unless you can show me an advanced move. I have heard rumors about your private training with your father and your constant research in the library. Show it to me, and you can have the rest of the day off. This got the attention of the crowd as they gathered to see the performance of a now livened blonde as he began to show the fruits of his training on his now restrained target. The young blonde widened his stance as he held his fully stretched right arm with his left hand and closed his eyes. He meditated to charge up enough Ryatsu for the move he would perform as he began the incantation. Carriage of Thunder. Bridge a spinning wheel. With light, divide this into 6. Mirror your path across the sky. And close your doors. At the final phrase of his incantation, he opened his eyes to see his target. His eyes now burning even brighter as his Ryatsu made a visible glow around his body. Feeling the charge of the energy course towards his palm, he raised his right hand while supporting it with his left and spoke the last lines of the incantation. Bakuto number 81, Soren Rikujikoro. A flash of light then beamed from his hand as they arched and fell upon the dummy. 12 wide beams of light formed around the target and embraced it in a heavenly clutch with 6 on its midsection holding its arms as well and the other 6 on its legs. The poor dummy had the life squeezed out of it as it fell to the ground from its post. The sheer display of power awed the crowd and gave a jaw-dropped expression on his instructor as the blonde strolled out of the academy. Piece of cake. I'll be seeing you tomorrow, sensei, the blonde shouted before making his final exit out into the streets of Seriidae. The crowd gathered around the site where the dummy had fallen just stood in awe while some of them began to murmur in the back. But overall, it was more than just a passing grade, but an amazing display of ability never seen before since Ichigo became a Shinigami. Meanwhile in the 5th division, Sarutobi just cried anime tears as he happily signed the several papers that stacked up on his desk. The wise old warrior was so engrossed in his work that he did not notice his Fukutecho and another person in Academy Hakama enter his office until the brown-haired girl cleared her voice before she spoke. Taicho, here are some more papers that need signing. And Naruto is here to see you, she said as she dumped the heavy load of papers on his desk. Sarutobi paid no attention to the stacks of paper as he peered over and asked the smiling young blonde in front of him. Oh, Naruto. Why are you here so early? The young blonde just gave his infamous foxy grin as he quickly replied. I was given the day off. Hinamori narrowed her eyes at the blonde. She had known the young blonde for 2 years now and could read him like a book every time he had come over to visit her Taicho. After all, she grew fond of the stories of the blonde and his antics in the real world as well as the life of Sarutobi and the Namikazes. This was especially true since she had been accompanying her Taicho to their regular dinners in that house. Feeling that her intuition was right this time, she swiftly, but carefully interrogated her blonde companion. I can tell that you made a deal with one of the instructors there. Do you just have to show off every time? The brown-haired girl said as she glared at the blonde menacingly. For some reason, she just reminded him of his old crush Sakura with the way she acted. The panicked blonde just scratched his head as he smiled and explained to them the situation. Well, that's about it. I'll be seeing you later at dinner, Aji-san, Momo-chan. Ja-ni, Sarutobi and Hinamori just looked shocked at the blonde's response as he bid them goodbye and took a stroll out and back on the streets of Seriidae. Hinamori chuckled at his antics. What's so funny, Momo-chan? He said as was curious of his Fukutecho's reason for laughing. Oh, he just reminded me of Toshiro Taicho before he became a Shinigami captain. He was so much like him. I think you mean he is like him. But I see your point. Naruto has grown tremendously. Already a genius at such a young age. His life here is so different now, Momo-chan? The brown-haired girl nodded and smiled as she responded to him. Yes, it sure is. True enough, Naruto's life was no longer what it once was. It was more than just a reversal for the young blonde. It was as if the tables have turned. Chapter 7 down. Why did I have Naruto train in chakra first before Ryatsu? The reasons will be explained in the following chapter. You now have an idea what timeline he is in. The next few chapters would be mostly training and character build-up. There will be action as well and a guest appearance from another dimension later on. I also need suggestions for other Bakuto and Kido spells not mentioned in the manga and anime. Arigato gozaimashita for reading another chapter in Naruto, Death's Second Chance. From our last escapade, it is now the 3rd year into our story and Naruto's progress had greatly increased. A new day had dawned for the young shinobi. Let me rephrase that statement, Shinigami to be. As he woke up once more to the silent orchestra of dawn, the young blonde methodically performed his morning routine before he lazily marched towards the training grounds behind the Namikaze mansion. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the office of the Sotecho where Commander Yamamoto Genryusai sat down to his usual desk-filled paperwork for the morning, Retsu came in promptly to give the report on the status of Naruto to the half-awake commander. So Teicho, with all due respect, I am here to give you the report of Naruto's progress within these past 3 years, the calm beauty said with a delighted tone to her voice, indicating that her report was something to enjoy listening to. The old warrior then cleared his desk as he sat down thoughtfully to discuss the young blonde's progress. So how goes his progress, Unhana? The calm beauty then replied to his remark with her astounding report. His progress is remarkable. He is like a sponge. He is no doubt one of the few geniuses that have entered the academy and breezed right through every subject with flying colors for the past 3 years. But not only that, it seems he is attempting to create his own Shinigami techniques using his past knowledge. I'm sure you have heard about his little experiments by adapting his past lifetime techniques with our own. The old warrior looked amused as a weak smile entered his hardened face. He then replied, Yes, I have seen some of his jutsus, was the word. Though it seemed a fruitless effort at first, seeing that most were ineffective towards Shinigamis of Fukuteicho class and above, until some of it he managed to succeed in creating, and half of those Chakuriatsu fusion techniques are somewhat effective. He may be on the edge of something new. Anything else you might add, my dear? Anohana's face then dropped into a more serious tone when she heard that last statement. It was her next half of the report that she was waiting to give to the old warrior that agitated her into seriousness. She then mustered her will and fired away the next report. Yes, so Teicho, unfortunately, his progress was too good. I can see that the blonde is no longer interested in the Shinigami arts, since he already mastered all of the basics taught to him in his current year level. In order to keep him at his current upstanding pace, he needs a challenge. Her words raised an eyebrow on the old warrior's face. A challenge, you say? Aside from his personally crafted fusion arts, what other challenge do you suppose should be given to the young genius? This was to be expected. The blonde's fusion techniques of chakra and ryatsu were more than enough of a challenge in itself when he showed some of it during a free spar. Retsu Unohana looked back in her mind as she remembered that faithful day. Flashback. It was a cool day as the breeze lightly swept over the stone-built square where 2 figures stood in the center as a small crowd gathered to watch the battle between the rising star of the academy Naruto and the former renowned genius of the academy, Hitsuguya Toshiro. The two in a flash, charged full frontal as sword met kunai. The white-haired teen pushed Naruto with the force of his steel. Naruto leaped back to avoid a side slash from Toshiro. While still in midair, he then performed a seal. But this time, he performed each hand seal in concert with the incantation he started to perform as he began the attack. Walls of iron sand. A priestly pagoda. Glowing ironclad fireflies. Standing upright. Silent to the end. After he said the incantation and landed on the ground just in time to finish the last seal, he then pointed his right middle and index fingers towards the white-haired teen and shouted the last lines of the incantation. Kinkudo No. 1, Gochu Tekken Fuin. Immediately, 5 huge pillars fell upon the unsuspecting Toshiro. However, only 4 managed to hit the white-haired teen as it missed his right hand, which he used to stab the sword in the ground and use as support. Seeing the success of the attack, Naruto smirked as he grabbed his kunai to dash forward so he could land the finishing blow, only to realize that his entire lower body was frozen to the ground. As the young blonde traced a line of ice from his feet, he saw that it ended at the sword of Toshiro. The blonde then made his foxy grin as he said, "Looks like a draw as Shiro-chan." The white-haired teen had a vein throbbing on his forehead as he said, "It's Hitsuguya Taisho to you, asshole." But yes, it is a draw. You're getting better at this, Naruto. I can't wait to see what else you could come up with in your Zanpakuto. The young blonde just laughed as he quickly shouted Kai, effectively releasing the seal on his white-haired friend who also released Naruto's ice prison. As the two stepped back into the crowd, the onlookers of the battle could only stare in awe at the quick skirmish that took place between Naruto and the captain of the 10th Division, Hitsuguya Toshiro. The white-haired teen had green eyes, which also was the same color of his sash that held his Zanpakuto in place over his sleeveless Haori and Shahakusho, in a diagonal position across his back for his right arm to reach with ease. The Zanpakuto itself had a blue hilt and sheath and a 4-pointed guard. As the white-haired teen and the young blonde both wiped their faces with a towel, a bubbly orange head with long hair and ample bust size leaned over to Toshiro while smiling innocently. "That was a good workout, Taicho. But you could have won if you took it more seriously," the bubbly orange head said in a sing-song fashion as even her baby blue eyes smiled in a U shape. But the calm and collective white-haired teen protested as he shook his head and said, "No, Matsumoto, his technique was that good. It felt like my body was hit by Azuru's Wabasuke 20 times. If I hadn't used Hairinmaru at the last second, he would have won. He has a lot of skill for him to combine his past lifetime techniques with Kido and use it effortlessly." The rest of the crowd looked jaw-dropped as they digested the information. 2 of those people in the crowd cried anime tears as the bubbly orange head walked over to the 2 in tears and collected her spoils for a well-placed bet. She chuckled happily as she said, "Looks like the next bet will be on Naruto next time, huh, Ikaku and Yumachika?" Both men just sighed in defeat while on a balcony just a little off from the battleground, an old man clutching his cane made a weak smile before walking away. End of flashback. Her memory of that fateful day was exactly the point she drove at the commander. Thus, it makes Anohana's next point even clearer as she answered with all grace and respect. I believe that he should be accelerated with the graduating batch of this year. Her words had now fully awakened the battle-scarred, bald old man as he sharpened his gaze at her, and raised both eyebrows before he answered back to her guarded request. Transferred to the battlefield directly from training? It hasn't been done in quite a while now. Despite its benefits for Seriidii as a whole, give a better reason to change my mind. Firm and steadfast to the law was the commander. However, his last statement showed that he was willing to make an exception if the blonde fit perfectly into the plan given to him. The calm beauty noticed his challenge and took it full force. She took a deep breath to calm her nerves before she answered him with her reason for accelerating our blonde hero to an advanced level. As you know, if it hadn't been for the efforts of Ichigo and his friends in Hueco Mundo, Aizen's plan would not be delayed this far from what could have been only 3 short months into a 3-year time period. With this in mind, we have to be ready to make a final assault to end his plot. But without a Taicho to lead the 9th Division, we would be short in combat efficiency when that time comes. The Soteicho, who was sharper than his sword, finished his sentence for her with what would be the predicted answer. And because the current Fukuteicho of the 9th Division cannot perform Bankai yet, you are hoping that a younger blonde genius with more potential can. That's a very interesting point of view, Unohana. Who do you suppose can be his personal proctors for the final tests? The commander was beyond intrigued by his words alone. The comrades smiled as they discussed further of the surprise that would befall our blonde hero. That same blonde, however, was busy training with his father and back at the training yard in the Namikaze compound. Within the past 3 years, his control over his Ryatsu and chakra has grown tremendously to a near flawlessness. His speed and strength has grown as well thanks to the now overall 3-ton seal and restoration seals that encompass his body. The training went so well that even he was surprised that his Zanjutsu was even better than his academy teacher Kaien Shikanu, and his Kido was nowhere near what the academy teachers could ever hope to teach him. As the young blonde got ready in a defensive sword stance ready to strike, his father, sweating from the workout, dropped his readied stance and motioned for them to take a break. The younger blonde then dropped his sword on the ground. As the sword fell, it began to glow red before transforming into his 9-tailed companion. While both master and servant were laying down exhausted from the training, his father took the liberty to head back to take some scrolls for him to learn from. While both master and servant sat in the now crater-filled clearing, the master decided to break the silence. Kyuubi, I've noticed a lot of things while we were training. Like what things? The fiery Kitsune asked as he opened his right eye towards the blonde, who responded with seriousness. Well, for one, despite my almost perfect Ryatsu control, it's more difficult to gather it when we went to our first field test near Karakura town than here. Even more surprising, chakra was easier to gather there than here despite the limited jutsus I could perform with this soul-based body. What's the real relationship between chakra and Ryatsu? So the Gaki noticed it. Not bad for a human. Most would have completely ignored it and continued using Ryatsu and completely forget about chakra, which converts all their chakra into Ryatsu. The Kyuubi thought as he now opened both his eyes and ears to hear the blonde's next words. Another thing I noticed, I can't do a jutsu and Kido at the same time. Aside from certain sealing jutsus that I can combine with Bakudo to enforce it, Kido and jutsus aren't completely compatible because of chakra and Ryatsu. What else? The now amused fox questioned as he gazed into the flaming azure eyes of the blonde. Naruto began to fascinate the fiery Kitsune with his enlightenment from their training. Okasan said that when you use Ryatsu, you tend to lose more of your memories of your past life. Yet I haven't forgotten a single thing. I feel it's related to my training as well. And finally, I tried using Ryatsu to do jutsus and chakra to do Kido, Hakuda, Hoho, and Zanjutsu. I ended up with weird results. Such as what happened now, am I right? Replied the Kyuubi to what the young blonde mentioned. Naruto didn't hesitate to continue sharing his discovery to his 9-tailed companion as he said, Hate. When I tried molding Ryatsu for the jutsus, it worked fine, no, better than I would with chakra. But when I molded chakra for the Shinigami arts, which was hard in itself by the way, I ended up with half-assed Kido, sucky Hakuda, almost no Hoho, and really weak Zanjutsu. It's as if chakra isn't present at all in this world. Seeing the opportune moment, the amused fox then stood upon a newly formed stump from a clean cut of Naruto's Zanpakuto, and carefully explained to his jailer what was going on with his Ryatsu and chakra. The reason why these things happen is because of the relationship between chakra and Ryatsu. Chakra is the energy of life. Ryatsu is the energy of death. It is in a way the relationship of ki and magic, with ki the physical and magic the spiritual. The fox then paused as he leapt off the stump and dug 2 holes in the ground and drew a deep line to connect them. He then filled it with water from Naruto's small canteen so that both holes were filled. Afterwards, he continued, chakra is the pool on the left while Ryatsu on the right. When there is too much chakra, there is very little Ryatsu and vice versa to keep the balance of power in check. Some worlds are born with this balance in which it is equal. Others have extremities in which there is too little of one and more of the other. That is why you have a hard time utilizing chakra in this dimension, and easier in the other, said the fox as he demonstrated by tossing the water back and forth through the small canal he made between the 2 holes. Naruto looked deep in thought. After several seconds he then said, so depending upon the balance of the world, there might be more chakra than Ryatsu, making it harder to mold the other. Does this apply also to those born from those worlds, or at least have the same affinity as those worlds? The fox laughed at his statements. It was more than he could bear before he finally quieted down and answered the puzzled blonde. Gaki, you catch on quick. Yes, it does apply to those of the same nature as their worlds. Souls, as you know, are Ryatsu-based. Meaning chakra is less proficient to a soul than one with a living body. If it were not so, then you wouldn't be using Ryatsu as often now, would you? The young blonde nodded. Seeing his acknowledgement, the Kyuubi continued. This also explains why you're having a harder time using chakra and Ryatsu together, since you're not in perfect harmony with both energies because you lack a living body for chakra. But what about my memories? Naruto asked his sly companion, feeling that aspect had been left out. The Kyuubi only sighed as he answered him. The reason for your memories is because of your high chakra reserves, which continually cycle in between chakra and Ryatsu due to your training. This, plus me, a chakra base being bound to your soul, keeps your memories intact. The only downside is your soul ages extremely slowly. You might become like Yuichiro, the Fukutecho of Zaraki Kenpachi, who never ages, only matures. Flashback. Naruto wandered around Seirei for quite a bit during his off time from schoolwork. As the young blonde waywardly roamed like a vagabond wolf, he paused for a minute as he looked towards the building to his right. It was the 11th Division headquarters, the very headquarters of the man who took his father's life and the place where the artist of the Shiki Fujin resided. Naruto, however, did not look pleased as he glared hard his flaming azure eyes at the building and said to himself, so this is the place of that team, and his cute little Fukutecho. I think I'll pay them a visit and shove my Zanpakuto up that team's ass and his Fukutecho's as well, the young blonde said to himself proudly. As he was about to enter the stone-carved building with a giant version of the captain's insignia on the front, he felt an arcane, but powerful presence behind him. Instinctively, he quickly unsheathed the Zanpakuto attached to his back with his right hand and made a quick, one-handed downward slice to the unsuspecting foe behind him. The sound of metal cleaving flesh never came. The young blonde looked at what force could have stopped his blade and ironically saw a bubbly pink-haired little girl holding the blade in place with only her thumb, which was unscathed by the sharp serrated edge of the steel. Naruto was dumbfounded as a sudden shiver ran up his spine. How could someone so small and seemingly frail stop his attack? She must have been extremely strong to accomplish that feat. Seeing his dumbfounded expression, the little pink-haired girl then giggled as she said, "What you doing here, Whiskers-chan? Did you come to play with Ken-chan? He's out playing with some hollows right now, so come back later," she said and ended it with a smile. Naruto looked frightened and pissed at the annoying girl in front of him. Aside from her short pink hair that fell slightly above shoulder length, and brown eyes, she had a permanent blush on her face, and wore the same but shorter attire as any Fukutecho, and had her Zanpakuto behind her in a loose cord with its sheath having a wheels attached to it, and a childlike flower design. Though disturbed by the immense strength of the girl in front of him, he noticed the sash tied around her left arm that read 11 in kanji. He then began to scream at her, "Kyuso! You're the Fukutecho of Zaraki Kenpachi. I've got a bone to pick with you, Gaki." The unnerved Yuichiro just laughed. Naruto was very annoyed at this point by the sight of several veins throbbing on his head. Yuichiro then stopped laughing and screamed at him as well, "BK. That's the spelling of Whiskers-chan. You should respect your elders more. I'm way older than you, Baka-chan." Naruto got even more pissed as he threw a punch at her only to get bitten in the arm and beaten to a pulp by a ravenous pink-haired banshee. After a full minute of playing with the Gaki, as Yuichiro would call it, she then happily skipped inside the 11th Division headquarters, leaving a half-dead blonde in a crater. The terrified blonde then said to himself, and a note to SS self, "Stay away from pink H-haired Gigi girls. Death is certain." End of flashback. Naruto shivered at the thought of Yuichiro, almost completely ignoring the point made by his nine-tailed friend. But he soon snapped out of his nostalgia of the pain as he remembered something the Kyuubi said that caught his mind. He then quoted the words once more to his nine-tailed companion. Chakra base being? The young blonde was even more perplexed at what his tenant said. The fox knew this and decided to explain further. "I am a being that forsook its humanity for power. In order to gain power, I became one with my soul's affinity, and in the process, lost control of the power and gave into it. It was good to feel all that power, but at the same time I slowly lost my sanity until I became the being you see before you." Naruto just looked shocked as he gazed into the red-slitted eyes of the Kyuubi. Who would have thought that this unpredictable force of nature was once human? The wide-eyed blonde then asked him with obvious curiosity, "How'd you do it? And you were human?" the young blonde said as he screamed and pointed at the fox with a jaw-dropped expression. The nine-tailed kitsune finally made his point that he was dying to tell him. He just waited for this moment, and now he could properly explain to the young blonde of his past life. "I was once a human like you. It was during a time when your world was young and the balance between spirit and body were in perfect harmony. Human beings at that time were one with nature and spirits, and Kami was delighted at that world. Eventually governance needed to take place for it to remain serene. So Kami created 5 beings to govern over the affinity they were given. Under the governance of those 5 beings, the spirits and nature under their reign took up their affinities. I was under Suzaku's reign when I was born. I was considered mischievous and a prankster as well as stubborn and loyal. But when the battle of the 5 elements came, every human being on Earth at that time gave in to their elemental affinity to protect themselves from the god's wrath. Most were able to return to their human form after, some couldn't. The blonde nodded and said, not surprising there. So you became the 9-tailed fox when you performed whatever technique was necessary to keep you and your family from being caught in their war. But you didn't answer my first question, said the impatient blonde as he crossed his arms and sharpened his ever-flaming gaze at the fox. The kitsune gazed back with his red, slitted eyes challenging the blonde's own azure ones. The tension was so thick that their killing intents struggled in canceling each other out until the fox closed his eyes in defeat and sighed. With the kitsune's sigh, came the smile of the blonde as he leaned closer to listen. The kitsune had no choice but to reply to the hungry blonde. The kitsune turned his back and looked at the sky overhead as his 9 tails faced it with him. After another sigh, the fox then said, when you get a living body back, then I'll tell you. The blonde face faltered as a sweat drop formed just in time for his father to come in carrying several scrolls and a face of enlightenment. The older blonde then sat down beside his son as he opened one of the scrolls while seriously talking to his son. Naruto, I have some good news and some bad news. The younger blonde looked at his father with a look of concern as he swallowed hard, not knowing what to expect. His father then continued, the good news is you're going to be accelerated to the graduating batch. The bad news is they have chosen your proctors for a special exam which will be a week ahead of schedule. What? That means I only have a month to learn Bankai. The young blonde screamed as he ran in circles panicking. His father on the other hand just scratched his face as he said, calm down Naruto. Besides, that's the least of your worries. Since you've been accelerated, you're 5 minutes late already Bifo. A flash of yellow cut off the older blonde's words as Naruto shunput his way to the academy leaving his father and Kyuubi in the battle-scarred terrain that was their backyard. Well, at least Naruto finished most of his shinobi training with us, said the older blonde as he took out a small black book from his pocket and opened it to the page with the latest writing. Good, there is still space here for the other justice. The older blonde smiled as he said to himself. The Kyuubi noticed the book he had in his hands and asked, you have his book? So you also know how to write in the ancient tongue? How long have you been filling in his notes? The older blonde then responded while filling in the notebook the information from the scrolls. For the past 2 years now. After Jiraiya taught me the archaic sealing technique, I've found ways to write it so that anyone who knows the language can read it but only those of the Namake's family can unseal it. Nifty trick, huh? The former yandame said as he kept writing in the notebook. However, his foxy companion smirked. Minato heard his smirk and asked, is there something else about the language you're not telling me? The Kyuubi saw his pleading look and complied with his request. The sealing technique is both a seal and an incantation because of the information needed to form each letter in the language. Minato was a genius for a reason. He never knew the extent of the possibilities with the seal that he made, but he knew that there were possibilities with it that even he couldn't imagine. He knew it was in itself an incantation when read, but he never knew that it could also be a magic spell in the process if the right information was pieced together. His realization was clear when the Kyuubi saw his wide-eyed amazement. Minato then asked the Kyuubi, does Naruto know about this? The sly kitsune then responded as he grinned in amusement. Yes, I told him. At first he didn't believe me, thinking it's just a forbidden shinobi technique. But when he and I sneaked in the archives and read of its origins and uses, he just gaped at it. Flashback. As they snuck past the guards and into the elevator that leads to the room full of ancient records known as the archives, the young blonde impatiently spoke to his tentant. Are you sure it's here? The Kyuubi responded back as he said, Baka! Keep it down! And yes, it's here. But we might have a hard time looking for it. The still skeptical blonde then said as he scratched his head and grinned. Come on! It's not like it's one of those humongous skyscrapers we saw in Tokyo when we went there on a field trip. How big can it be? How wrong and naive was the young blonde? The moment he opened the doors and pushed the button on the elevator that moved in the room, his jaw dropped all the way to the floor while his eyes became saucers at the mere sight of the vastness of the archives. It was as tall if not taller than the skyscrapers of Tokyo, with the several shelves lined and stacked upward and sideways with only the elevator as the only means of exit from the vastness of the rooms. Not even the wall lamps that lined the walls could light up the gigantic room. The Kyuubi, who eagerly wanted to finish their insertion into the catacombs of knowledge, wasted no time and leaped upon the computer near the elevator controls and began to push the buttons with his paw, the coordinates of the location about the ancient tongue. When they arrived at the said coordinates, both master and tenant leaped off the elevator and began searching for the book they were looking for. Lucky for them, Naruto had his bunchins look all over until one clone found the book. Naruto then dispersed all his clones and started reading through it, page per page. His eyes grew wider with every page he turned as he realized the potential the archaic seal contained. He then said to his 9-tailed companion, Wow! This is amazing. The blonde was speechless. It was more than he could handle knowing he has such power in his hands. While Naruto was processing the immense amount of knowledge he had just gained, the red-maned kitsune slipped one of his tails into Naruto's pocket until it grasped an empty scroll. The Kyuubi then opened the scroll and sealed the book in the scroll. This act, however, snapped the young blonde back into consciousness as he then began to panic when he protested, saying, Oh, Are we supposed to do that? Isn't this stealing? He said while flailing his arms around as they returned to the elevator. The Kyuubi paid him no heed as he grabbed the scroll with one of his tails and both hurried out of the room and back to the Namake's compound. End of flashback. The Kyuubi then chuckled darkly as he remembered the look on Naruto's face the whole day after that misadventure. Minato could only look puzzled as he sweat dropped thinking the Kyuubi had lost its mind. Naruto was not pleased with this turn of events. To him, both were bad news since things were much more rushed than his lax lifestyle for the past 3 years. As he shunted his way into class, he leaped just in time for roll call. The entire class just laughed at the now prone blonde on the floor, much to his chagrin. While the young blonde was blushing beet red, a calm beauty just behind his prone form near the blackboard began to speak. Looks like you're just in time, Naruto. For a second there, your perfect attendance record would have been tarnished. When the young blonde stood up and looked at the woman, he recognized her. It was the 4th Division captain that helped him during his first day of class when he was running late for the first time. The young blonde just gave his infamous foxy grin as he said, "Well, this is nostalgic. I hope I can catch up." With that, the day started like any normal day except that Naruto pushed himself even harder than before. It was now more of a challenge as he was forced to quickly cope up. Though he didn't have to do much concerning the practical tests, he had a long way to go paperwork-wise. Lucky for him, he had enough chakra control to manipulate what little chakra he had to form Kage Bunshins for his paperwork when the day finally ended. The young blonde then left his clones to do most of the work, while he went home for his training in chakra and Ryatsu control as well as his final study in Genjutsu from his mother. Upon his arrival at the mansion, he then quickly went to his room and changed into his training outfit. It was a bluish-black hakama over his fishnet undershirt with white striping the edges of the sleeves and jacket and tied by a long cyan obi. He also had a cyan scarf and his legs were wrapped to prevent the loose leg garments from hindering mobility and tabi boots. When he was all set for his training, he then immediately ran out to the area furthest in the compound just past some trees where his mother awaited in the middle of what looks like several small ponds close together that they are just a foot away from each other, but far enough that they don't collide with each other and form a huge lake. As the blonde approached the edge of the first pond, his mother then called out to him, "You ready to rumble, son? We don't have much time before your big exam," she hollered out to him while pumping her fist in the air. The young blonde's eyes burned even brighter as they turned a flaming cyan.